in her hands, worried and upset because we couldn't find Tara. When the workers would ask her what was wrong, she would say, "I'm just so worried about Tara." My mother had a stroke and died 28 days after Tara disappeared. The workers in that home told me they fully believed the stress of Tara's disappearance brought on that stroke that ended her life in a matter of hours. I wasn't even able to be with my mother during the last days of her life to comfort her because we were out looking for Tara, doing everything we knew to do to find her. So I have to live with that sadness every day too, that I could not be there for her at a time when she needed me the most. What he didn't see was the days and nights that we were so overcome with grief we could barely function. The sadness that I still see in her daddy's eyes over losing his little girl breaks my heart. And while all of those situations I just described were taking place, he did nothing. He just went on living his life, not caring about the pain he had caused to others. He knew she was never coming back. He could have at least told us that, but he didn't. And the reason he knew she wasn't coming back is because he had put load after load of wood on her body and burned her. He tried to make sure there would be nothing left of her. He underestimated how much she meant to so many people, and he underestimated her family and her friends and the fact that we would never give up. Tara was a wonderful person. She was a great teacher. She always tried to help her students reach their full potential. She was a hard worker and still a student herself. She had accomplished so much in her young life, but she still had dreams and goals that she was working towards. Now, all we can do is hold her dreams in our hearts because we will never see her fulfill them. His selfish, evil acts have hurt so many people and changed our lives forever. But our words here today, and even what the court of public opinion thinks of him, should not really be what matters most to him. What should matter the very most is what God sees when he looks into his heart. Tara's dad and I respectfully ask that this court give him the maximum sentence. Thank you for allowing me to speak on our behalf today.
Sentencing hearings can be very difficult for a lot of different family members, but not just for the family members of the victim. Let's also hear the family members of the defendant. So we had the opportunity to hear from Bo Duke's mother, Dixie Hudson. Let's play that for you right now.
Honor, it is obvious that my son has problems, and I ask that consideration be given today, that along with incarceration, that some form of rehabilitation will also be discussed. Thank you.
And we didn't just hear from the family of the victim and the defendant, we also heard from Bo Dukes himself. Take a look.
To the Tara Grinstead family, I'm truly sorry. Your long suffering has been unimaginable. My actions are cowardly, callous, and cruel. I was more interested in self-pity and self-preservation than doing the right thing for Tara and for you. I pray for your forgiveness. I apologize to those who were cast under a cloud of suspicion for so long. Reputations with their friends and family destroyed. I can never undo that damage, and I sincerely apologize. To the local communities, I'm sorry for the years of uncertainty, of suspicion, and mistrust placed even on the law enforcement community by my actions. I apologize to my own family, to my mother, to Brooke Sheridan, and to her family. My actions and failures I'm responsible for alone. I failed Tara Grinstead. I failed her family. I failed the local community. and I hope these proceedings have given some closure to the many people hurt by my actions. And I want each of you to know that I am truly remorseful. Thank you.
Well, the judge had no sympathy for Mr. Dukes, and he ultimately sentenced him to 25 years in prison. It was 5 years for the first 2 counts, actually for the first 3 counts, and then 10 years for the last count. And the thing that the judge really made clear was the idea that he committed this crime when he was a man. He wasn't a teenager, he was a 21-year-old man. And the fact that he kept it hidden for so long and kept Tara Grinstead's family questioning and guessing for so long, that was the big point that the judge made when he ultimately sentenced Mr. Dukes. And as I'll keep saying, this is only part 1 of this case. Mr. Dukes, again, faces charges in Ben Hill County, similar to the charges in Wilcox County, but this one is more tailored to the idea of him disposing of the body. So he could face even more prison time. And let's not forget, he also faces sexual assault charges in an unrelated case. The legal jeopardy, the legal team for Bo Dukes, it's not looking so good for him. But also we can't forget that Ryan Duke, his trial will be April 1st, and we're going to cover that here on Law and Crime. Now, we have a lot more to talk about with Bo Dukes and breaking down this entire trial from last week, so we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have a lot more to play, including his police interview. Stay tuned here on Law and Crime. We'll be right back.
I'm Dan Abrams, and this is the Law and Crime Network.
His body just went boom.
She did it! We've been covering 2 trials.
The only 24/7 network with expert legal analysis and gavel-to-gavel live trial coverage.
He kissed me goodbye on the cheek. That was the last time we saw him.
From high-profile cases to the most compelling local trials.
You didn't expect. Let me finish.
We cover the most interesting and important legal news going on across the country.
A verdict in the case of an Ohio woman who took the stand and admitted she shot and killed her military husband.
And our multi-platform brand is resonating. From syndication
With more, we're joined by Law and Crime Network host Jesse Weber.
to our expert analysis.
With me now is Rachel Stockman, editor-in-chief for Law and Crime Network.
This former head prosecutor, criminal defense attorney, and host of Law and Crime Network, Bob Bianchi.
On Monday, the Law and Crime Network covering the trial live.
Let's get to the top legal stories of the day with Jesse Weber, attorney and anchor for the Law and Crime Network. So good morning, Jesse.
With dozens of places to watch, we already have tens of millions of minutes viewed per month. And our viewers and readers are engaged, with more than 30,000 comments per month on the site, a bustling chat room, and an average watch time of 30 minutes.
Womanizer, that's fine. It doesn't make me guilty of solicitation of capital murder.
This is Law and Crime.
We got a lot of fascinating cases, as we always do, gavel-to-gavel coverage.
In the fastest growing genre in America, we are uniquely positioned to dominate. This is Law and Crime.
Where are you headed?
Just gonna hang out.
If any of your buddies ever pressure you to take a drink, just tell them you promised your dad you wouldn't.
I promise. Love you too, Dad.
They really do hear you. For tips on what to say, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Our son Arjun was born with cystic fibrosis. CF is a genetic disease that shortens lives. When the foundation was founded in 1955, children with CF rarely live long enough to attend kindergarten. Today, thanks to the foundation's groundbreaking research, advocacy, and care, some people with CF are attending college, getting married, and starting families. We've made amazing progress, but until a cure is found for all people with CF, we will not stop. Help us add tomorrows. Visit cff.org today.
Matthew. I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. And what you say really does matter to me.
All the talks we've had over the years, including what you've told me about not using alcohol and other drugs, they stick with me, and they make a difference, especially at times that matter most.
Hey, want a drink?
No thanks, I'm good. So thank you, Dad, for preparing me for what's ahead.
Talk. They hear you.
Welcome back. We're still recapping a major case from last week that we covered here on the Law and Crime Network, the trial of Bo Dukes, the man who was found guilty and ultimately sentenced to 25 years in prison for lying to investigators in 2016 about he and Ryan Duke's involvement in the disappearance and murder of Tara Grinstead. And more specifically, it was charged by the state that he lied to investigators in 2016, specifically the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. He denied that he had a conversation or confessed with an Army buddy of his that he helped burn the body of Tara Grinstead, that he tried to conceal this so that the investigators wouldn't find out more information. And what was interesting about this case was we saw this 2016 interview where he makes out these blanket denials of having any involvement or knowledge or making any of these statements. And then in 2017, he sits down for an interview. Bo Duke sits down with an interview with one of the lead investigators from the GBI, and he admits to everything. And it seems to be that he admitted because he couldn't keep this in any longer. But remember, we're talking about 2017. Tara disappeared in 2005. That time frame is something the judge truly considered in his sentencing, that really you kept people guessing, and more specifically, the family of Tara Grinstead for so long. That's the big issue. But let's go to 2017. This was played for the jury. This is his interview where he finally admits, well, his version of the truth and what happened to Tara Grinstead. Take a look.
I was at our house. Ryan was there. A few people came over. We were drinking. And I passed out, went to sleep, woke up the next morning, or actually somewhere early afternoon or something. Ryan woke me up and said that he told me that he had, this was next Sunday, told me that he had killed Tara Grinstead. I thought he was, I didn't believe him, I thought he was out of his mind. I told him, didn't go home, let me go to sleep. The next day, I think it was the next day, his brother, who also was with us, came home and told me that she was missing. And I told him what Ryan told me that the day before. And he didn't say anything about it, really, just kind of wanted. I think I asked Ryan again a couple days later, like that Wednesday, after I seen everything in the media going on, and he told me yes, he had. And I didn't believe him, and he asked me to come with him out to the beginning of the truth. And I went with him, and we drove back into the back, and he showed me where her body was. And freaked out, got up. I asked him what the hell had happened. He told me that he had gone to her house that night, used a credit card to get him through the front door lock, and strangled her into bed. And then brought her body to Orchard. But they had stopped in Fitzgerald at a dumpster behind the laundry mat there, and thrown her purse and keys in the laundromat. I don't know if he was trying to put her body in the dumpster too, get do it, and so anything like that. And he asked me to help him get rid of her body, and I agreed to help him. And there was a shelter out there that was full of firewood, split wood and fat lighter. And we used that in my truck and moved her body to wood area. There was a bunch of wood, and we burned it over a period of like 2 days. face.
I mean, he takes you to this orchard, and is the body covered up with anything? Is it clothed?
No, it was not clothed at all. And it wasn't covered up with anything. It was laying face up in some knee-high grass.
Okay, but you could like just see it unless you. I mean, if you were walking by, you'd see it, but like just like if you were parked over here, you probably couldn't be able to see it, right?
Okay. No. I mean, but if you were, it wouldn't be too far away, you could see it.
Okay.
I mean, maybe 2 rows over.
And you said it was laying face up?
Yeah.
Did you know who it was by looking at her? The body?
Yes. I mean, he'd already told me who it was, so I guess I was already expecting that, but...
And you had her for a class still resembling her?
Yeah, I mean, it was... discolored, I mean, I guess blood pool, there had been ants on her.
Was there any other marks or scars or anything? Gunshots, knife wounds?
Marks on her neck.
Can you describe the marks on her neck?
Almost like bruising, I guess. Not extremely noticeable, but they're there.
Were there like lines or anything like really distinct? Okay. So by this time you're probably freaking out.
Yeah.
Okay. So you immediately see this and you're like, what in the hell did you do?
Yeah. And why the fuck would you do it here on my family's big orchard? I mean,
what did he say?
Help me. That dude, she messed up and needed my help. I was angry.
Is that what he told you what happened?
Yes.
Go through that again, tell me.
I asked him exactly what had happened. He told me later in the night, after everybody had gone, after I was asleep, he drove a fish trailer, drove to her house, and he said it was late, very late that night. And he used a credit card to get in through the front door. He jumped on her while she was in bed and strangled her right there in her bed. And then he had moved her body with the truck, I don't know, in the front seat of the back seat of the truck.
So this is Bo Dukes confessing to something that he denied a year earlier, that he simply covered up the mess of Ryan Duke. Why? There's really no clear reason, an inexplicable reason why he agreed to help do this, but we're going to continue on showing you this police interview. And one thing to note, in the Ryan Duke case coming up on April 1st, we believe he is going to be pointing the finger at Bo Dukes and saying that he is the actual killer. Let's keep going.
Did anybody ever come back to you and say, hey, was anybody out there, do you know if anybody was burning or anything?
My uncle did one time.
That's the caller?
Hudson, Randy Hudson.
Okay.
A couple weeks later, he asked me if I had a way that year because the fire had gotten away from somebody.
Okay.
Later.
And that's Randy?
Yeah, I told him.
You told him, yeah, we had a party?
I told him that, I didn't know anything about it.
All right. So, nude body, no clothes, not sure where they may be. She had ants on her. She had some discoloration, like blood pooling, like she'd been there a little bit.
Yeah.
You're freaking out, you're mad, he's probably begging for help at this point.
Yeah.
Why you?
I was the only closest person to him. I don't think. And it was already here. I mean, it was already on my family's place. I think he thought I would be more likely to help in this situation.
So you did help him. You moved the body from here to here?
Yes.
Would that be loaded in the back of the truck and drive down and then carry it into the woods?
You could drive right to that spot then.
Okay. Like, kind of like, right. Looks like there's a discoloration here where you split road or something.
Yeah, there's a trail and there was another trail that branched off too. I'm not sure it's still there.
You can pretty much go right to the area.
I think so, yeah.
You can pretty much go there and go, yeah, it's probably right in that little 5-foot area.
Yeah, I think so.
So you basically, you said it took a couple days. Did y'all light the fire, burn it, leave, come back, or did y'all just stay out there and watch it burn?
We left and came back a couple times.
And each time it got a little bit less of the body, a little bit less of the body?
Yeah, we put add more wood.
You can still, after the first burn, you can still see the body.
Yeah.
Just kind of like charred.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, was there any like jewelry or anything on her that you wear, or was it just completely new body?
I think she was wearing a belly button ring.
Okay. Remember what it looked like?
Not really, no.
Like diamondy or blue?
I think it was just plain.
Do you remember if it was on the upper half or the lower half of the belly button?
I don't remember.
Any other jewelry that you can think of? Any tattoos? Anything like that? Okay. So you said it took several days?
2 days.
2 days? So by Friday, there's nothing left?
No.
That you can, I mean, nothing like, there's probably some little smaller bones or stuff like that that y'all just kind of left there?
It looked like a...
And you have to imagine that given the amount of detail that he's giving and explaining these kinds of circumstances, this is probably what really happened to Tara Grinstead. I mean, people have been looking for answers for this since 2005. There's been different rumors and theories about what happened to her and who did what. But given the amount of detail and, you know, the small circumstances, you have to imagine that this is what ultimately happened to her. So, and he also mentions the fact that speaking to other people, that becomes a big point in this case. The fact that he made statements to family and friends about his involvement, that ultimately came to bite him and come back to haunt him because they testified in this trial against him. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But right now, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to play you more of Bo Duke's police interview, which could be argued the most important piece of evidence from this entire trial. We'll be right back right after this. Hey everyone, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is more legal news you can use. Today's topic focuses upon the common issue of when your neighbor's trees cause you problems. So what are your rights? By law, you can trim branches or limbs of a neighbor's tree that extends past the property line. But don't go overboard. You can't chop down the tree. Otherwise, you may have to pay for it. Now, if the tree blocks your view, 1, check if there's a local ordinance. 2, maybe you can enter into an agreement with your neighbor regarding the view. Or 3, see whether your neighbor deliberately and maliciously blocked your view, because you then may have a case. A couple more strange things. Your neighbor not only owns the tree, but the fruit on it too. So technically, you're not allowed to pick fruit off of it. Courts, however, are split about fruit that falls onto your property. Although, honestly, why not just go to a supermarket? Are you really that in need of an apple? Also, you may think your neighbor has to clean up all the leaves from the tree that blow into your yard. Well, you'd be wrong. leaves are not the owner's responsibility. So instead, try building a fence. Now, your neighbor can be held liable by a court if a tree falls and causes damage to your property, but it all depends on how the tree was maintained and inspected. At the end of the day, it's important to know your rights, but always try speaking with your neighbor first to address the problem. Go to lawandcrime.com for more legal news you can use.
A brain aneurysm doesn't care if you're busy. It doesn't care that you have important meetings. It doesn't care that you have to drop your daughter off at ballet and your son off at soccer practice. And if you ignore the warning signs of a brain aneurysm, you'll realize too late that the meeting wasn't that important. No meeting is. That you'll never see another soccer game, and that your daughter won't see you in the audience at the big recital. So if you suddenly experience the worst headache of your life, sharp pain behind your eye, and blurry vision, don't ignore it. Seek immediate emergency care, because your family is counting on you to take care of you. The Lisa Calagrassi Foundation, shedding light on brain aneurysms. Learn more at lisafoundation.org.
As we constantly talk about privacy today, one of the biggest questions is how do you protect a photo or video of yourself from being used online without your permission? Now, I know you kids love face twittering and instabooking, so let's start with the basic idea that you need to be careful where you post pictures and videos. That means understanding a website's terms of service, because you may be granting a site a license to use your image in ways that you weren't aware of. Also, most legitimate sites will lay out their process to remove material, so you'll want to follow those steps first to get something deleted immediately. But what laws help you to do all this? Here we go, you little legal eagles. Basic rule: you automatically own the copyright in any photo or video you take. Technically, you can go after someone for copyright infringement if your photos or videos are posted or distributed online without your permission. However, under a complicated law called the DMCA, platforms that allow people to post on their sites, such as YouTube, must be provided notice of the infringement before you can properly sue them. Speaking of lawsuits, you may be able to sue someone under state right of privacy or publicity laws. For example, if without your consent your face or body are being exploited online to sell or promote something, or if there was a photo or video secretly taken of you while you were in private, you may have a very strong case. Go to lawandcrime.com for more legal news you can use.
Do you know the signs of a brain aneurysm? The worst headache of your life? Pain behind one eye? Dizziness or blurry vision? Don't ignore it. Seek immediate emergency care. The Lisa Calagrassi Foundation. Learn more at lisafoundation.org.
Welcome back, everybody. We're still recapping the trial of Bo Dukes from last week. And where we last left off, we were playing you his 2017 interview with the GBI, where he confessed that Ryan Duke killed Tara Grinstead and he himself helped burn the body. But the GBI wasn't the only place where he confessed to his crimes. He also apparently confessed to other people. Take a look.
And most recently, you've told somebody else.
Yeah.
What you're telling me, who was that?
Brooke Sherman.
Who else? Anybody?
My ex-wife.
Who was that?
Emily Stillman.
When did you tell her?
2008 or 2009.
What did she say back then?
She was surprised. My friend Dustin Troglin.
Troglin?
T-R-G-L-I-N. T-R-O-G-L-I-N. I think he also goes his last name Warren. I think he just changed it for some reason.
They all live local?
No, Dustin lives in Portland.
Oregon?
Yeah. Emily lives in Cameron Mills, New York.
Cameron Mills?
Yeah. I told two guys a couple months after it happened, one night, Reese Jones and Cliff Benson. I mean, it's stuff you can't even tell a therapist. And then it's like, you have issues and tell somebody that you can't tell them shit like this. I mean,
Because you've been wanting to talk about this for a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go into other things that just happened in your past, but some of the things, the drugs and maybe drinking and stuff has probably been a cause for some of this, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of like a...
Wonder if Bo Dukes regrets opening up, because that ultimately led to his downfall. All those witnesses came forward and testified against him. Let's see more of what he talked about in this GBI interview from 2017.
I know that we've collected some evidence on the scene from Tara's house that has DNA. Do you think any of that's going to match? Did he ever talk about using gloves? Or
I asked him about the gloves. He told me that he didn't use gloves. So,
yeah. Did y'all ever go back by the house?
No.
Even on the next morning, do you know if he went back by the house? Got him some help with something, or maybe check the scene out, make sure it was all. Did he ever revisit the scene that you know of?
I don't think so. It's all me.
Okay. Did he specifically say you never use gloves?
Yeah.
Or was that just something you were thinking? You specifically asked him about it at that time.
I asked him.
When did you ask him that? Because that wasn't something that didn't come out until a lot later down the road.
I couldn't tell you that. It was sometime after it came out, obviously.
I mean, the glove didn't come out until 2009, 2008, 2009.
I would have been waiting for it then. That was that year, 2005 or so.
Right when it happened.
So I must have just asked him if he wore gloves or something.
Okay.
Because until last year when he messaged me, I hadn't spoken to him since 2007.
You've revisited this site?
Yeah.
Many times, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, not out there. I've been, yeah. I used to have to spray the orchard last summer.
Tell me about that.
Fucking sucks. Terrible. Scary as fuck out there. It's dark. The tractor out there at night. And then I went out there to work one time.
Was that last month?
Yeah.
Bill mentioned that you spent about a week out there at one point in time in your truck, I guess this is afterward.
Yeah.
Just trying to find some sanity.
Something like that. I think it was like 3 days.
All right, we got to take a quick break, but we got more of Bo Duke's interview right after this.
I'm Dan Abrams, and this is the Law&Crime Network.
Hey everybody, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is Legal News You Can Use. So you ever watch a soap opera, and the issue comes up about the wealthy patriarch not leaving anything in his will to his wife or kids? Well, if you haven't, then clearly you're watching quality television like me, but it gets you thinking. Can you disinherit your spouse or children? Let's start with the kids. In almost all states, you don't have to leave your adult children anything. It's pretty surprising, right? However, this doesn't mean all kids. You usually can't disinherit minor children, and in Louisiana, you not only can't disinherit those under 23, but also those who don't have the mental capacity to take care of themselves. Oh, and of course, this also doesn't include if a court orders you to leave them something, like, say, in a divorce. But if you really want to disinherit your adult children, and remember, don't make that decision lightly, you'll have to make sure you have a will or some kind of estate plan. Because if you don't, and you don't have a surviving spouse, guess what? Generally, the law says your stuff is going to your kids. Now, what about your wife or husband? Well, this is where it gets tricky. Most states say you can't intentionally disinherit your spouse unless he or she agrees, usually in a pre- or post-nuptial agreement. Okay, then you're asking, what is your other half entitled to? Depends on the state. Some look at how long you're married, if you had children together, and if there are any assets that need to be probated. Look, this can get complicated and messy, so as with everything, consult with an attorney first. For more legal news you can use, go to lawandcrime.com.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
We're still recapping the Bo Dukes trial from last week, and we're continuing to play for you his police interview from 2017, where he confesses to the fact that not only did Ryan Duke murder Tara Grinstead, but Mr. Dukes himself helped cover it up by burning the body of Grinstead on his family's pecan orchard over a course of 2 days. Let's continue on with his 2017 police interview.
You remember seeing the blood pooling? Was it on her front or was it on her back?
On her back. And like, I don't know, she was ants all over.
But there wasn't any blood on the outside. There was no. Just the strangle. You said strangle.
Yeah, discoloration.
Did he ever say what he used?
His hands.
Okay. Or anything, just strangled her?
No, it doesn't look like that. I mean, everything looks sort of weird. I mean, I've seen dead bodies since then, but nothing after, like, it's been sitting outside like 5 days, so it looked, just everything was kind of like slipping and looking.
Was there any bursting of the body or anything like that? She stayed intact?
Yeah.
And you said we used a credit card to get the door?
Yeah, some kind of card.
Okay. She was asleep on her bed, you jumped on her bed, while she was asleep and strangled her.
Sure.
Is it possible that he could have had some sort of relationship or secret romance or met her at a bar? And y'all frequented like white boys and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, is it possible you met her at the bar and you're not aware of it, or they had some conversations?
It's possible, but I'm not aware of it.
Okay. I know cell phones, the way they are now is a lot different, but did you have a cell phone back then? Did he have a cell phone back then?
I don't think I had a cell phone back then. I think he might have. I can't remember if I had one.
Now, even though Mr. Dukes gave a detailed confession, I think a lot of us were left with more questions. And the defense was sure to exploit that in their closing argument. Let's take a look at what they had to say.
Not once has Mr. Dukes said that he knows why Ryan Alexander Duke killed Tara Faye Grinstead. Not once. That question has been posed multiple times. You have heard it on multiple recordings. You have heard the questions asked to people he has talked to about this. Did he tell you why he did it? I don't know. I have asked him. He's not told me. I don't know. He's never given me that information. He can't tell you whether Ryan Alexander Duke acted with malice or not. He doesn't know. Words matter. The words in the indictment matter, and the words chosen were that it was a concealment of a confession of malice murder. And if you've never been told why someone did something, you don't have knowledge of it. The state could have charged it, or could have said felony murder. They could have said voluntary manslaughter. They're the ones who framed this indictment. They chose the words malice murder. Mr. Dukes can't tell you why Ryan Alexander Duke killed Tara Faye Grinstead. That is only a question Ryan Alexander Duke can answer. Finally, when evaluating this third count, I want you to keep in mind that this is what is called a specific intent crime. That is, it has to be done with the specific intent to conceal information and prevent the apprehension of Ryan Duke. Ryan Duke. But is that the situation that you have seen in this evidence? The evidence has been presented and has shown you that Ryan Duke killed Tara Faye Grinstead. Mr. Dukes is charged in Ben Hill County with having participated in concealing her death by burning her body. So ask yourself, if Mr. Dukes made a denial, is he doing that out of an altruistic interest? He wants to protect his friend Ryan Duke? Or is he doing that with the specific intent to keep himself from being in trouble, to keep himself from being prosecuted for what is alleged to be his role, what he's charged with in Ben Hill County, which is destroying the body? Self-preservation is a powerful instinct. Draw on your own experiences. Now go back to the interview, February 21, 2017. There is zero hesitation on Mr. Duke's part to help the GBI apprehend Ryan Duke.
Interesting legal argument there by the defense. What the prosecution have to say in their closing argument?
It burned the bones of Tara Faye Grinstead, a cheerleading coach, a high school teacher, a winning personality with a beautiful smile. And what did Bo Dukes and Ryan Alexander Duke do to this beautiful lady? They set her on fire. And they left her with a tooth. The tooth that won pageants. The smile on billboards. The smile on missing persons posters. They reduced to bits of skull, vertebra, and teeth. and they just forgot it. Oh, I just forgot. I don't remember that.
Bo Dukes was facing 4 serious charges. What did the jury come back with? Here's the verdict from last week.
We, the jury, found the defendant count 1, making a false statement, guilty. Count 2, making a false statement, guilty. Count 3, hindering apprehension or punishment of a criminal, guilty. Count 4, concealing death of another, guilty. This 21st day of March 2019.
Well, it didn't take the jury long to convict this man. And again, this is just part 1 of this case. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison. The judge had no sympathy for him, said that he held the facts, the truth of what happened to Tara Grinstead for so long, kept the family of Tara Grinstead waiting for so long, many questions about what happened to her, and he was selfish about it. He only came forward when he had no other choice. Now, he will be facing a separate trial in Ben Hill County on other charges, mostly related to him allegedly disposing of the body of Miss Grinstead by burning her body on his family's pecan orchard. Ryan Duke's trial will be on April 1st, and that's for the murder charge. We believe that he will be pointing the finger at Bo Dukes. So this is just one part of a really incredible saga that has been going on for years. We're going to take a break, though. When we come back, we're going to switch gears and talk about the James Scandirito Jr. case. We'll be right back.
My name is Sam Leitch. About a year ago, I had a heart transplant. My life was saved on the last day that I was supposed to be on this planet. I don't know who my donor was, but that person saved my life. And now I know what a miracle feels like. It feels terrific. Having a new heart's given me time to spend more time with my loved ones, watching them grow up. That new heart gave me a new mission in life, and that is to get others to sign up to be organ and tissue donors. The most common thing I hear when I ask people why they haven't signed up is, I don't know, I just haven't thought about it. Well, why don't you think about it? Think about the life you might save or the life you might enhance. Over 130 million people have already signed up to be an organ, eye, or tissue donor. They're men and women, all ages, all races, and they have one thing in common. They want to save lives. Please sign up to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You don't want to miss your chance to save a life.
Hey everyone, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is Legal News You Can Use. The internet can be a complicated place for many different reasons, but one of the questions that seems to always confuse people is, can I use a photo or image that I find online? Let's discuss. Okay, so first, copyrights. Copyrights are all the exclusive rights that someone has in an original work that he or she created, including images. How they're distributed, seen, copied, and otherwise used is up to the copyright owner. Generally, if you created the image, you automatically own the copyright in it. Pretty cool, right? What this means is that you usually need the permission of the copyright owner before using the image. However, ask yourself the following. Are you planning to use the image sparingly, or maybe only a portion of it? Are you not going to make money off of it? Are you using it in a news reporting, educational, or scholarly context that benefits the public? Are you completely changing the image so it's unrecognizable? Are you transforming the meaning of the image, like using it in a parody? Is it impossible to get the permission of the copyright owner? Well, if your answer is yes to some or all of these questions, then you may be able to use it without permission, but that's not always guaranteed. Also, sometimes images no longer are copyright protected, meaning they're in the public domain, or the owner grants something called a Creative Commons license, allowing others to freely use the image in specific ways. There are websites that offer royalty-free stock images as well. You should look into all that too. Copyrights aside, if the image features a logo or slogan, or a person, particularly a celebrity, then other issues could come into play as well, including trademark, privacy, and right of publicity laws. I told you, complicated. So best practice is to get permission or give credit whenever you can before using an image, particularly on social media. For more legal news you can use, go to lawandcrime.com.
Can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me something. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, no thanks, not my thing.
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Do you know the signs of a brain aneurysm? The worst headache of your life? Pain behind one eye? Dizziness or blurry vision? Don't ignore it. Seek immediate emergency care. The Lisa Calagrassi Foundation. Learn more at lisafoundation.org.
Welcome back to Law and Crime, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and thanks for joining us. We're talking about a lot of things today. Let's keep going. So we are going to continue recapping some of our major trials from last week. We just talked about the Bo Dukes case. A little bit later on in the program, we're going to recap the trial of Jason Carter, the man who was found not guilty of murdering his mother, Shirley Carter. But right now, we're going to switch gears and go talk about the James Scandirito Jr. case out of Florida. The man who was charged with not only killing his father, but then dismembering his body and taking those remains and burying him on a golf course, as well as throwing them in a dumpster. Just a disgusting case. But the jury ultimately came back and found this man not guilty of murder, but guilty of abuse of a dead human body, which I should tell you carries with it up to 15 years in prison. He's going to be sentenced on June 21st, so we're going to definitely cover that here on Law and Crime. But let's just recap this case, because it was definitely one that stays with you. Maybe for all the wrong reasons, I'm not sure, but it really stayed with me. And I want to go back to the prosecution's closing argument. This was their last attempt to convince this jury that this man is a murderer. Let's show what they had to say.
He is closer with his mom than he is with his dad. His dad is tough. His dad is active. His dad loves to go and play golf and racquetball. He's 74 years old. He likes to go on dates with other women. He's living his best life. But the defendant is not. And we can see the financial strain between the two of them starting way back. Okay? This is State's Exhibit number 15. What we see in State's Exhibit 15 is a promissory note. It's a promissory note, and this will go back into evidence with you. It's a promissory note from Skip to his son in 2011 in the amount of $10,000. And you heard that was about the time the defendant was going through a divorce. His dad gives him that money, 10 grand. But it's not free. He charged him 2% interest on that $10,000 loan, is what it is. And he writes it, he memorializes it into a document to ensure, for Skip to ensure that he's going to get that money back. Because you heard that the defendant isn't good with his money. It's not good with his credit cards. He has expenditures over the years that he can't pay. So when we do that, when we look through all of that, we start to get a better picture, not just about his financial status, but of his relationship with his dad. So I want to start by talking about 2013 on. And when you put together all these little puzzle pieces of this case, and I know that there's a lot, but when you look at all the documents, you look at all the records, you look at all the physical evidence, and you realize the time frame that this happened in, and what the defendant's doing before, and what he's doing after, a clear picture appears. The defendant dismembered his body, his father's body, to cover up his premeditated murder. That's why he did it. And then he flees the country, or tries to get away with as much money as he can at that point in time, because he killed and dismembered his father, and he didn't expect the police to catch on.
gentlemen, you heard a lot of testimony in this case and a lot of evidence. But I implore you to use your common, everyday sense in analyzing the facts of this case, in analyzing motivation, desecration of another human body. And you cannot rationalize with irrational behavior. But when you look at the evidence, you can see the strain between the two of them, the mounting pressure from his finances, the promises he's making to a woman that he has feelings for, that he wants to give her a life. He wants to go back to that life, and he's 50 years old, and his dad is 74 years old, and he's the only thing standing in his way, because he can't keep a steady income. Ladies and gentlemen, when you put all of those pieces together, that picture that is shown to you from your common sense is that the defendant killed and dismembered his father, period. And ladies and gentlemen, you'll see a verdict form, and the highest crime charge in this case is premeditated first-degree murder. And the state's evidence does show you that, step by step by step.
All right, let's break this case down. Joining me is forensic death investigator from Jacksonville State University, Joseph Scott Morgan. You know, Joseph, one of the things that we talked about when this case was going on, it's something that's still stuck in my mind. I kept mentioning it. You mentioned that you not only need the tools to commit this crime, to actually dismember a body, but you need the will to be able to do that. Can you just tell our viewers from the top, what does it take for someone to truly cut up a body?
You really want me to go there, huh, Jesse?
It's the first question I want right off the bat.
Hey, I got to tell you, man, good morning, by the way.
Good morning.
I have to say, it is a laborious task, in the best of conditions in the morgue, where I worked for a long, long time, and we have to dissect out bodies for particular reasons that are tied to science. It takes a while to do this, and we've got really good tools. This guy was allegedly working with, I can tell you we're not surgery-grade tools in order to facilitate this. He had a space in which to do this that would have had to have been protected out of sight, where someone couldn't hear the sounds that were going on dependent upon the tool that he was using. And then it comes in this kind of human factor. This is daddy we're talking about, right?
Right.
How, you scratch your head, you sit here and you think, how in the world can you stand over dad's, dead body and begin to take, a hacksaw or a carpenter saw and begin to cut through the tissue? You reflect back to what the forensic pathologist said. When he was talking about dismembering the body, there were actually jagged signs on the body where he had attempted to saw through the tissue. This is the work of an amateur to begin with, because we would have to, use a sharp instrument to cut through the tissue to get to the bone where we start to use a saw.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness he was an amateur, and this was not a repeated pattern of this kind of behavior. And I want to talk more about people committing this kind of crime. But before we do that, the defense wasn't arguing that he chopped up the body. They were just arguing that this was murder. Let's see what they had to say in their closing argument.
But early in the trial, Detective Hanley had testified about the conversation they had with Jimmy and Gary Gooden in the house. And they went, if you recall, they had it right there, and then they had to do the search afterwards, and they wanted to walk through the home and see everything. And Detective Hanley specifically noticed that Jimmy was calm, cool, and collected until they got to the garage. That is when he noticed a significant nervousness about Jimmy. Jimmy wasn't nervous in other parts of the house. Jimmy was perfectly fine. He was subconsciously terrified when they got to the place where the only thing bad happened, at the garage. You think he planted that there? You think he wanted Hanley to notice this stuff? No. He was pretending like nothing bad happened. Hanley made an observation of the fact. And he doesn't even realize how significant that was. And look, poking and prodding the whole time about the disgusting nature of what happened, that's an emotional play. I'm not going to do that with you. It was gross. I'm not going to talk about snapping stuff off to get you riled up to make a decision. I'm going to ask that we talk about the evidence and the facts only. We know that the body parts are in 2 separate places. That's a fact. We only have the upper part of the body. The legs and the arms and the head are not here. And Jimmy told us what happened. He couldn't lift it, which is why he had to buy a dolly. He couldn't lift the body. So when it was in pieces, he could move it, but he still couldn't move it all. He had to put it into suitcases, and then he had to get it into the truck, and then he had to get rid of it. At this point, to sit here and say you call 911 and explain this, I mean, that's just ridiculous. You're in way too deep now. Your snowball has gotten so big that you have to just keep rolling. You know, the state made a huge deal about the heads missing because it's so important. Well, what about the arms and the legs? They were just the pieces that could be lifted. That's what he said, but we don't have to really take his word for it. We can just look at the evidence. That makes the most sense. He couldn't lift the body anyway. He had to buy the dolly. He would have easily just slid it in if it wouldn't have been a problem. And he left these suitcases on the golf course. He said he left it over by the pump house. We don't have to take his word for it. The canine guys came in here. We spent 2 hours talking about puppies, okay? But he came in here and he said the dog smelled and stayed at the pump house. They had to take the dog away because it was stuck there. I mean, the dog had picked up on the scent where it was.
Interesting kind of balancing act there by the point of the defense. And Joseph, I mean, what did you make of it? Again, they're not really fighting the chopping up the body, but they are arguing, murder here. What did you make of what they're saying?
Well, he said the body's in 2 separate places. I beg to differ with counsel. The body's in 3 separate places. We found the upper torso, the lower torso, partially intact. Where's the rest of it? That means that there's a 3rd location. He says, hey, making a big deal out of the head. Yeah, we're making a big deal out of the head because from a forensic standpoint, therein may lie some answers as to causality of death and manner of death at the end of the day. If Jimmy is so keen on letting us know that he dismembered the body, cool. I'm fine with that. Now that the dust is settled, why don't you just, tell us where the head is so that we can go and take a look. You're telling me you lost a head, that you have no idea as to where it is. I'm really wondering where this is going to be found. I was thinking, early on that it could have been in that lake. I was wondering if they had drained it, if they had sent divers in. Inquiring minds want to know. I want to know where the head is. Possibly the skull is still intact at this point in time, and you can go back and you can make heads or tails out of what type of trauma, if any, is present on the skull, and that's going to be very, very important. So, he's very dismissive in this, and I find that, and you're right, he is walking a tightrope here. And hey, man, my hat's off to him. Kudos. He got this guy off, but I got to tell you, I think that everybody deserves to know where the rest of the body is. Because,
as you said, if that skull had any fracture, any kind of trauma, it would indicate that perhaps he didn't fall, or hit his head, but perhaps he was hit. Perhaps this was a murder. And it's interesting because nobody would really think about that the head of the body tells so much about what happened to the rest of it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, we all know, all you got to do is watch a movie or read a book or something, study anything about true crime, and we know that the head many times is involved in fatal trauma. And, my question is, what's so important about the head that you have to keep it from everybody? It's not like you're talking about, well, I had a rare coin in my pocket and I lost it. We're talking about a head. This head may have weighed 5 to 8 pounds. Where did you put it? I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know. Where is the head? And the thing about it, Jesse, is I don't know that we'll ever get an answer to that question.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't think we're going to get a lot of answers to many questions that we have about this case, including why James Scandirito ultimately decided chopping up the body was best. Yes, we have his explanation, But does that really answer all of our questions? I mean, let's tell you what, we're going to take a break. When we come back, let's play you James Scandirito Jr. when he took the stand and explained his behavior and the mistakes he made. Because if you haven't seen it, oh boy, it is something to watch. We'll be right back.
I'm Dan Abrams, and this is the Law&Crime Network.
His body just went boom.
She did it! We've been covering 2 trials.
The only 24/7 network with expert legal analysis and gavel-to-gavel live trial coverage.
He kissed me goodbye on the cheek. That was the last time we saw him.
From high-profile cases to the most compelling local trials.
You didn't expect. Let me finish.
We cover the most interesting and important legal news going on across the country.
A verdict in the case of an Ohio woman who took the stand and admitted she shot and killed her military husband.
And our multi-platform brand is resonating. From syndication
With more, we're joined by Law&Crime Network host Jesse Weber.
to our expert analysis.
With me now is Rachel Stockman, editor-in-chief for Law&Crime Network.
This former head prosecutor, criminal defense attorney, and host of Law&Crime Network, Bob Bianchi.
On Monday, the Law&Crime Network covering the trial live.
Let's get to the top legal stories of the day with Jesse Weber, attorney and anchor for the Law&Crime Network. So good morning, Jesse.
With dozens of places to watch, we already have tens of millions of minutes viewed per month. And our viewers and readers are engaged, with more than 30,000 comments per month on the site, a bustling chat room, and an average watch time of 30 minutes.
Womanizer, that's fine. It doesn't make me guilty of solicitation of capital murder.
This is Law&Crime.
We got a lot of fascinating cases, as we always do, gavel-to-gavel coverage.
In the fastest growing genre in America, we are uniquely positioned to dominate. This is Law&Crime.
Where are you headed?
Just gonna hang out.
If any of your buddies ever pressure you to take a drink, just tell them you promised your dad you wouldn't.
I promise. Love you too, Dad.
They really do hear you. For tips on what to say, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Our son Arjun was born with cystic fibrosis. CF is a genetic disease that shortens lives. When the foundation was founded in 1955, children with CF rarely live long enough to attend kindergarten. Today, thanks to the foundation's groundbreaking research, advocacy, and care, some people with CF are attending college, getting married, and starting families. We've made amazing progress, but until a cure is found for all people with CF, we will not stop. Help us add tomorrows. Visit cff.org today.
Matthew. I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. And what you say really does matter to me.
All the talks we've had over the years, including what you've told me about not using alcohol and other drugs, they stick with me, and they make a difference, especially at times that matter most.
Hey, want a drink?
No thanks, I'm good. So thank you, Dad, for preparing me for what's ahead.
Talk. They hear you.
We're still recapping the James Scandirito Jr. case from last week, and what a trial it was to watch. But one of the things that really sticks out more than anything is when the defendant himself took the stand and explained an absolutely insane story of how he found his father dead, all his drugs all over the place. He didn't want to get in trouble, so he did the thing that he thought was best at the time, which was dispose of the body by chopping it up and throwing those remains in a garbage receptacle and on a golf course. This is not even like I'm making this up. This is exactly what he says, and I want to play it for you right now.
I come inside, I guess, it was somewhere around 11:30, right after I was done communicating with Mayara, within 10 minutes probably of that. I come in the back door, and I don't see him in the chair. At the back patio door, I don't see him in the chair, and as I come around, I see him. He's on the floor, kind of on his side between the table and his chair, kind of with his head rested against the couch. And I yelled, "Dad, are you okay?" And no response. Thought maybe he just passed out or something, so I kind of grab him and shake him a little bit, and nothing. I checked his pulse at his neck. There was no pulse at all. I tried to roll him over. I mean, it's kind of a tight little quarters there. I kind of tried to roll him over and pushing on his chest, and there's no response. He feels like he's not. His body temperature isn't what it normally is. It feels not cold, but like it had happened, a little bit before then, certainly. He had knocked over all of the cocaine that was on the cake server, the appetizer server. That was on the floor. It was on the couch. It was on him, and he was just kind of laying in it. And once I saw all of that, my first reaction was that he might have done a line of cocaine and just passed out onto the table.
So, Joseph, I'm going to ask you the same question that I ask any guest when seeing this. What's your reaction to the defendant testifying here?
My reaction as a former death investigator is that why didn't you just simply call 911? There's a lot of sins that can be forgiven if you reach out to someone and say, look, Dad's in a bad way. I don't know what to do. He goes back to this idea that there's drugs in the apartment. He doesn't want.
Joseph, haven't we realized one thing here on Law and Crime? People try to get out of their own mess, and they make it worse. But, I just want to ask you, as you watch this, does this strike a chord with you as a sense, a lot of people do this to try to escape liability? They chop a body up. Is this common practice?
No. Out of all the deaths that I investigated in my career, I have investigated dismemberments, and I have to tell you categorically that every death that I worked as a death investigator that resulted in a dismemberment always had some kind of homicidal attachment to it. It was not one of these events where, oh my God, Dad's had a coronary, let's dissect the body. That's just never happened in my experience. Maybe it's happened in other people's experience. I have no idea. But in my little slice of the world, it never happened to me. So yeah, it's not, in my perception, a normal reaction.
I know there were some reports out there that, there were cases out, I think in the Midwest, where people had dismembered bodies, and there was drug overdoses. They hadn't killed the people, but there were drug overdoses. And yes, there are those instances. This case stands out for a lot of different reasons. I want to just continue playing more of James Scandirito Jr. on the stand, and then Joseph and I are going to break it down.
I mean, there's really, I would never say I ever had a plan, My thought was to kind of roll him over onto the dolly and then pull him out. By that point, it had been, I don't know, 6 or 7 hours maybe since he had passed away. Maybe I should just put him in his bed. That way I could, when I woke up, he was dead in his bed. And I needed to, finish making sure that there was no cocaine or marijuana stuff in the family room area. So I ended up...
Did you put him on the dolly?
I did. I kind of rested the dolly against the couch and then just kind of worked him onto it. And then I kind of pushed the dolly, kept keeping it really low, so he's laying on it, out in front of the TV, into the hallway. Dolly's long. I mean, I don't know, it's 4 or 5 feet. My dad's 6 feet. So once you get into the hallway, you have to kind of lift it up to turn it. And that's when, problems occurred in terms of him starting to fall off the dolly, me banging it into the walls. I couldn't move it. I couldn't balance him on the dolly and work it around the tight corner of the hallway. And I ended up just kind of falling and dropping, the dolly with him on it, and just kind of breaking down and crying at that point. Like, what the hell, what has just happened? What's going on? Just the whole enormity of the situation presented itself, I guess, at that moment.
Joseph, as we listen to this, again, the jury found him not guilty of that murder, and I'm curious, was this just too outrageous of a story? The details were so concrete about what happened that a jury just couldn't ignore this, that perhaps this is really, if someone were to dismember somebody, this is really how it would go down.
I don't know. We really don't have a template for that, do we, Jesse?
We don't.
It's, and I don't know what the jury would kind of refer to in this as, going back in time. You mentioned the cases in the Midwest just a moment ago. Those cases are outliers, statistically speaking. The lion's share of ODs that I have worked over the course of my career, where where you have to have separation from the individuals, principals that are involved with this individual and the deceased, generally those bodies are dumps. We're talking about, there's a big difference between putting a body in the back of the car and taking it out on a rural road and dumping it. Right. There's a big jump to dissecting out your dad's body. This is completely, wholly bizarre. I just hope everybody understands that it's a bizarre set of circumstances, and I don't see how you go. He's in there, Jesse. He admits by his own admission, he says he's in there with dad's body for 7 to 8 hours. 7 to 8 hours, and then you have to account for the amount of time that it took to dissect the body and then to distribute the body. So now we're talking about a huge window of time here. You're telling me that you won't have a moment of clarity and all of that you're completely panic-driven but in the midst of all of this for that protracted period of time.
Well, I think he clearly knew what he was doing, and at points he said he took smoke breaks. I think he said he vomited. He went back home. He went to the store to get supplies. I mean, he really thought about what he was doing, and he made this decision. He looks back on it now and calls it a mistake and says that every time he tried to do something, it made it worse, it made it worse, it made it worse. The question really became, and he could face, he was found guilty of that abuse of a dead human body, and he could face 15 years in prison for that. The question all became about whether or not this was murder. So I thought it was an interesting legal argument here to say, hey, we're going to admit that he did this, but just because he did it, you can't prejudice him in the sense that means he ultimately murdered his father. But as you agree, it's just hard to separate the two.
Yeah, it is. And again, to defense counsel, kudos. They have planned this thing out strategically. Hey, they had the guts to put this guy up on the stand. Kudos for that, because like they always say, the old adage, you want to hear him say it, and he was willing to go on the stand and address this issue, as uncomfortable and as embarrassing as this could be. But again, I've got to tell you, this for me as an analyst is going to be a benchmark. This is not a case I'm going to forget anytime soon.
No.
When I reflect back over it.
No, and it's definitely not. And it's partly because of how he testified, and it's also because of the verdict that was handed down. It's something that we'll definitely keep in our minds. Again, probably for all the wrong reasons. But when we come back, I do want to talk with you, Joseph, about the idea of what the medical examiner said, that this was a homicide by unspecified means. And does that determination, did that help the defense? Did it help the prosecution? Did it hurt their case? We're going to talk about that. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to play more of James Scandirito Jr. on The Stand. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is more legal news you can use. Listen, I don't have to tell you that breakups can get complicated. Who gets the dog? What happens to the pictures? Do you delete the person off social media? But one of the most important issues, what happens if you share a bank account with your ex who just took out all the money? Let's discuss your options. By law, joint owners of a bank account each have a right to the funds. So technically, your ex could empty the whole account, even if you're the one who put the money there in the first place. Instead, think about requiring multiple signatures for withdrawals or having each person only own part of the account. But in the case of marriage, the law may help you. Yes, your ex, prior to divorce, may have the right to empty the whole joint account, but that doesn't mean he or she is off the hook. A court could order your ex to reimburse you a portion if it was taken out for improper purposes. This could be seen as dissipation or wasting of marital assets, and your ex may have to pay attorney's fees and costs associated with collecting. Also, his or her share of the marital property could be negatively adjusted. Oh, and shocker, courts aren't going to look too favorably on the person that spent that money on a mistress or paramour. Oh, and if your ex empties an account after divorce papers are filed, he or she may be in serious trouble because a court sometimes orders that no withdrawals can be made once the divorce process starts. Not all's fair in love, war, and money. Go to lawandcrime.com for more legal news you can use.
Can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me something. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, no thanks, not my thing.
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
My name is Sam Leitch. About a year ago, I had a heart transplant. My life was saved on the last day that I was supposed to be on this planet. I don't know who my donor was, but that person saved my life. And now I know what a miracle feels like. It feels terrific. Having a new heart's given me time to spend more time with my loved ones, watching them grow up. That new heart gave me a new mission in life, and that is to get others to sign up to be organ and tissue donors. The most common thing I hear when I ask people why they haven't signed up is, I don't know, I just haven't thought about it. Well, why don't you think about it? Think about the life you might save or the life you might enhance. Over 130 million people have already signed up to be an organ, eye, or tissue donor. They're men and women, all ages, all races, and they have one thing in common. They want to save lives. Please sign up to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You don't want to miss your chance to save a life.
Do you know the signs of a brain aneurysm? The worst headache of your life? Pain behind one eye? Dizziness or blurry vision? Don't ignore it. Seek immediate emergency care. The Lisa Calagrassi Foundation. Learn more at lisafoundation.org.
And welcome back, everybody. So we're still talking about the James Scandirito Jr. case and really recapping what a bizarre tale this was from the defendant when he took the stand and explained how he dismembered his father and maybe more importantly, why he dismembered his father. But one of the things that we had an opportunity to hear about was the timeline of his day. And what a day it was. Here's more of James Scandirito from the stand.
Okay, and do you go back home?
I do.
All right, and what do you do once you get back to your house?
I try to sleep. I try to just crash is the proper term for it, I guess. But I can't. I can't fall asleep.
Okay. Do you eventually go back to your dad's house?
I do. Yes.
Okay. Now, before you go back to your house, to your dad's house, you hear testimony that there are a couple of times that you go to Publix with your dad's car.
Yes.
Right? At 3-something in the afternoon and later, a little after 6 that day. Okay? And when you're in the Publix on the afternoon of the 29th, specifically the time at 3:39, you're buying household cleaners, cigarettes, and beer.
Yes.
Why?
I mean, I basically come to the realization that I'm not going to be able to load my father's body into the back of his truck if I'm going to, bury it, or if I'm going to, do something to remove him from the house.
And you're not going to be able to get him back into the bed?
No, he had when I couldn't move him through the hallway, and he fell off the cart. I mean, he had stiffened up at that point. I didn't, test his arms in terms of like that, but he was stiffening, and at that point I kind of knew that there was, even if I tried to find a friend or somebody that would help me, there was no way that he would probably be in a natural position in the bed after he had been on the floor earlier all night. I watched CSI. I'm sure somebody could have told that I had moved the body.
So you had a fear that you would get somehow questioned or interrogated about this just because you had changed the scene around?
Yeah, I had that fear ever since I saw him, dead on the ground. I had that fear that I had to talk to somebody about it.
Okay. So between the first time that you go to the Publix at 3:39, and then at 6:25 you return to Publix again, you're buying garbage bags, paper towels, a mop. Okay, what are you doing between those two trips to Publix?
At that time, I think I am at the. I think I'd get something to eat. I think I might go to a drive-through and get something to eat, and then I probably am back where where the cars were parked over at that condo.
At Boca Chica?
Yeah, Boca Chica.
Okay, because you just can't go home?
I can't. No, I can't.
Okay. At 6:25, you buy actually a roll of duct tape. And what was the purpose of that?
The purpose of that was to duct tape him to the dolly, secure him to the dolly.
Okay. And do you do that?
I do.
All right. By the time that you go home at, roughly 6:30, 7 o'clock that night, have you decided in your mind what you're going to have to do?
I have.
And what was that?
That I'm going to have to dismember my dad to be able to move him out of the...
Joseph, for a guy who's never done this before, he seems to have quite the plan laid out.
Yeah, he even referenced CSI in there. I guess he's seen some things on TV, hasn't he? He's talking about positionality of the body, the stiffening, the rigor, moving him from the floor to the bed, that somehow, I got to tell you, Jesse, this guy's got, and just to back up a second, his dad had such a plethora of medical history. I think he's got a triple bypass. Mm-hmm. If we can if this thing to death, but if he had just simply placed him on the bed and tried to marry up the positionality of the father in the bed, which would have been rather simple to do, this probably would have amounted to the cops coming out, taking a look at the body. Someone from the ME, an investigator, probably would have come out. He could have said, "Yeah, Dad just passed away in his sleep."
Well,
but again, I get to this.
I mean, look at the idea of him in a room drugs. He said he would move the body. His father's just dead. He's the only person there. I could also see a strong case for him being the killer here. You know, I mean, that he maybe gave his father an overdose, knew what his condition was. I could plan a whole case based upon that.
Oh yeah, you absolutely can. But you know, the problem is that even the toxicology report that came out, Moat, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, Dr. Moat actually said that there's really no quantifying the amount that he had in, because that he had in his system. They drew this up from decompositional fluid, by the way, because it was too degraded in order to get a measurable amount to say whether or not he's in lethal range or not.
Yeah, I want to talk more about the medical examiner. I do, because there's a really important point that he made, and I want your perspective on it. But before we do that, let's just get some more of James Scandirito, where he does show a lot of emotion on the stand. The first time we saw it, take a look.
His back.
Okay. Do you leave him on the dolly, taped to the dolly in the garage?
Yes.
Okay. And do you do that when you are dismembering?
Yes.
Okay. So you have heard the medical examiner talk about the fact that the body is cut from essentially back to front?
Yes.
Okay. Does his body remain on the dolly while you are cutting him?
Yeah, because I rolled the dolly over when I am doing the dismembering of the extremities.
Okay. And so you are cutting those portions that are hanging off of the dolly?
Yes.
Okay. How did you sort of plan or set up to do that? I mean, is your dad just laying there in the open?
There's a space in front of the, of course you've seen it all many times, in front of the refrigerator when you come out of the garage on the left side, and if you're looking on the left side of the garage, there's a space there. So I had laid a clear tarp down. The dolly was on top of the tarp, and then I had another tarp that went over the top of the dolly and the plastic tarp that was underneath the dolly.
Okay. And so when you are actually cutting him, you're using what?
A saw.
Okay. An electric saw or a hand saw?
No, it's a hand saw.
Okay, a hand saw that was at the house.
Yes, it was hanging up in the garage.
And when you are actually cutting him, are you doing that underneath the top part?
Yes.
And why is that?
Because I can't look at what I'm doing. I just can't.
You heard some testimony from the medical examiner that there was some black markings on the body that they thought was magic marker.
Yes.
Okay. Did you mark him in any way?
No.
Do you have any idea what the black mark is?
My only guess would be it's from the duct tape.
Okay. The residue from the duct tape.
That would be my only guess.
Okay.
I did not use a Sharpie on my dad's body.
Okay. All right. And so as you dismember a portion of his body, what do you do with that portion?
I take a garbage bag and I kind of cover the part that is being dismembered. So when the arm, let's say, is finally dismembered, it's kind of falls into the garbage bag.
And with those garbage bags individually, what did you do with them?
When I eventually ended up putting them all into 3 suitcases.
Suitcases that were at the house already?
Yes.
Okay. How long long does it take you to do this?
I mean, it seemed like I was doing it all night. I mean, I know Dr. Mote said it was easy. And maybe it's not, physically strenuous. But, it wasn't, it was not something that it was a quick, it was a long time. I would take frequent breaks, go out through the garage door, into the outside of the house, the side of the house, smoke cigarettes, and just, wish that this nightmare wasn't happening.
All right, so Joseph, the jury didn't find him guilty of murder, and the question is, the medical examiner came forward and said this was homicide by unspecified means, basically saying, and this is what I interpret it to be, that it's a killing. We know it was a killing. We just don't know exactly how it happened. Did that hurt the prosecution's case in establishing a murder charge?
Yeah, I think that it does, because you want someone of academic esteem to be able to sit on the stand if you're the jury. These are my words. And say to them definitively, this is what, in fact, killed this individual. And for Dr. Moti, as he stated, he was absent the head. And so based upon his history of working with cases of dismemberment, it becomes a numbers game at that point in time. Non-specified remains or non-specified homicidal trauma, or however whatever the phraseology is specifically.
Right.
What he's saying is that all the collective cases that I've worked over a period of time, and also in the literature, indicate to me that it's going to be best that I list toward this idea of homicide.
Right.
This determination.
And I want to dissect that a little bit more, no pun intended. But when we get back, let's talk about that more and what impact that had on the entire case. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have more of James Scandirito Jr. on the stand. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is legal news you can use. Today's topic, you get injured on the job. Now what do you do? Number one, get first aid or medical treatment immediately. I want to make sure you're okay. Except in emergencies, you may have to go to a provider authorized by the Workers' Compensation Board or your employer. Second, notify your employer as soon as possible of all of your injuries, including any previous injuries you may have, no matter how small you may think they are. This is important because if you wait on this or are not transparent, you not only risk losing your right to receive workers' comp, but if this goes to court, your case could be thrown out for fraud. After notifying, then complete and file a workers' comp form and send to the Workers' Compensation Board. You need that money, my friends. Finally, when you're able, go back to work. Can't stress this enough because you place future compensation, benefits, and even your job in jeopardy. Claiming that you lost the ability to earn a living is not an easy thing to prove in court. Now you may be saying, Jesse, what about suing? I got injured, someone should pay. Well, before you go all off with their heads on me, determine if the injury was caused by any of the following: a defective product, a toxic substance, the intentional or negligent act of your employer or a third party, or if your employer doesn't carry workers' comp insurance. If any of the following are true, you may have a case. But as always, consult with an attorney first, and in some injury cases, you may need multiple attorneys. Go to lawandcrime.com for more legal news you can use. Hey everyone, this is Jesse Weber. Here at the Law&Crime Network, we are dedicated to bringing you the most interesting live trials and legal stories in the news today.
Goodbye, Larry. May God bless your dark, broken soul.
We've covered everything, from the Aaron Hernandez murder trial to the Harvey Weinstein sexual abuse scandal. Get ready, because we go live into the courtroom as the drama unfolds.
For the record, go to hell.
This is Law&Crime. Welcome back, everybody. We're still recapping the James Scandirito Jr. case from last week, and what a case it was. Let's continue playing you the defendant on the stand. If you haven't seen it, my gosh, I don't think I've ever really seen a defendant take the stand and tell a story quite like this. Let's keep going.
When you eventually have the body packed into these 3 suitcases, is it morning time by then?
Yeah, it's. I want to say it's it's close to 7 o'clock maybe. I mean, 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. I don't know. I wasn't watching the clock at that time, but it was certainly early in the morning. Sun was not quite up and wasn't up yet.
What do you do with the tarps?
I folded them all up and put them into a garbage bag in of itself and put it into suitcases.
Okay. And is there a lot of cleanup to do after this?
Not really. There was not a lot of blood that was on the floor or anywhere to clean up, but there was some certainly towards the garage, closer to where the garage door was. Mainly from cutting through the torso.
And how do you clean that up?
Paper towels and some of the cleaner, bleach cleaner.
Okay. Is there any blood inside the house?
No.
All right. So that morning, which would have been the morning of the 30th, what do you do with the suitcases?
I take them out to put them into the back of my dad's SUV.
And how did you get the SUV back?
How did I get it back to?
Wasn't it at Boca Chica?
No, it was already at my dad's house.
Okay, so you brought it back before.
Yes, that night it was there.
Well, the jury definitely considered his testimony on the stand. Let's see what they ultimately said in their verdict. Take a look.
We, the jury, find as follows. As to count 1, we find the defendant not guilty. As to count 2, we find the defendant guilty of abuse of a dead human body as charged in the indictment. So say we all, this 21st day of March, 2019, in West Palm Beach County, Florida, signed jury foreperson.
So again, he could face 15 years in prison on the charge that he was found guilty of. He will be sentenced on June 21st. But the not guilty of murder charge, some people were surprised, others weren't. I'm back here with Joseph Scott Morgan to break it down. Now, Joseph, again, big difficulty, I think, for the prosecution was trying to establish how much of what he was hiding was a murder and how much of what he was hiding was he was just trying to cover up, a dead body that he finds with the drugs all over the place. But one of the things that you mentioned that keeps staying with me is that all the body parts, in particular the head and the arms, were disposed of in a different place and they weren't found. And that tells you something, doesn't it, Joseph?
Yeah, it does. It goes to the modality of death. It's a big question that whether I'm asking it or just John Q. Public out on the street, people are going to have questions about this. There'll always be that question in the back of everyone's mind: what actually happened? He has stated that he disposed of the head, I think, separately, along with the arms, in a trash receptacle. Okay, well, that's all fine and good, but it does leave that door open, doesn't it? What if that head and those arms are recovered at some point in time? And let me tell you the forensic value that those items hold, okay? They hold, for the head, we can talk about natural disease. Did he have a stroke? The head, we can talk about trauma. Is the skull fractured? Is there a gunshot wound in it? Was he bludgeoned? And as far as the hands and the arms, those things indicate for us in the forensic field potentially signs of marks of defense? Was he raising his arm at any point in time? Does he have scratches on his hands? Does he have any kind of bruising on his hands or contusions? So that door is always left open. And then down the road, what happens if these items, these anatomical parts, the head and the remainder of the torso, are eventually recovered, and some viable forensic evidence is recovered, subsequent to that? That's going to be a big question.
Well, he won't be tried for murder again. I mean, he won't. That's just the way our system works. Real quick, 20 seconds. I mean, is it possible that James Scandirito Sr. died from natural causes?
Yeah, I suppose it is. And we could say natural causes, but what if it was a drug-induced? Or what if it was, say, this guy's got a long cardiac history. He's already had a triple bypass. What if it was enough, these drugs that the son talked about, to push him over the edge? So you got a combination of an accidental event that's coupled with a natural disease.
And the jury thought that. The jury said this is a plausible explanation. Yep. We can't rule definitively here. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. And they ultimately found him not guilty of that charge. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're switching gears and talking about Jason Carter. We'll be right back.
What would happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be.
There is no typical firefighter.
Everybody can make something, because I think everyone has a spark of creativity, and the reason that I have to keep making is because I don't think my life would be as fulfilling without it. If you make things yourself, that means you're not cowering in fear. You're out there taking chances. That, I think, is my way of saying I love you to the world. All right, now I want to hear why you make.
Share your own Why I Make story today. Visit whyimake.org.
Can I give you a hand?
All across the country, people are coming together to speed up what we can learn about health. The All of Us Research Program is calling on 1 million people to join us as we try to change the future of health. For your family, for future generations, for all of us. Visit joinallofus.org and find out how you can become 1 in a million.
Yes. Oh, hi. I suppose you're wondering what an A-list celebrity like me is doing in a place like this. You must know, I'm saving the world. Oh, hi, Beth. Yep, saving the world again. And did you know that 40% of all the food produced in the United States is thrown away? That means everything that went into that food, the pesticides, the water, the land, was all for nothing. Just look at this perfectly good food thrown in the trash. The pizza with extra Cheerios, these goldfish and Band-Aid tacos. And just look at this perfect trash burger. This pasta dog looks delicious.
You don't have to dumpster dive like Ed Begley Jr. to save the planet. Fight food waste by shopping smart and using what you buy before it gets trashed.
That's way better. Ooh, arugula.
Do your part and find out other world-saving tips at betterthaned.org.
Welcome back to Law and Crime, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and thanks for joining us. So we are continuing to cover some major trials that we covered here last week. We talked about the Bo Dukes trial. We talked about the James Scandirito Jr. case. And now we are going to talk about the Jason Carter case, the man who was on trial for the murder of his mother, Shirley Carter, back in 2015. A jury last week ultimately decided that he was not guilty of murder. Incredible case to talk about, both from the prosecution's point of view and the defense. It should be noted, in about an hour, our very own Bob Bianchi is going to be interviewing the lead prosecutor in that case, Ed Bull, and I guarantee you that's not something you're going to want to miss. I do want to let you know, though, that we want to preview a brand new case here on the network, so let's talk about it. And you know where it's out of. Do I even have to say? I'll tell you. Florida, of course. A jury has been finalized, and we do expect opening statements today in the trial of Jonchuck. He's the man who's accused of killing his 5-year-old daughter, Phoebe, by allegedly throwing her off a bridge in Tampa, Florida on January 8th, 2015. The jury consists of 9 men and 7 women. We believe the prosecution has a pretty strong case against Mr. Jonchuck to show that he is the killer, including a potential eyewitness to the crime. We believe the defense, though, is not going to be arguing that. They're not going to be arguing that he's not the killer. What we believe they're going to do is saying that, jury, he may be the killer, but they're going to argue that he is insane. And he was insane at the time of the crime, and therefore he is not legally responsible for the crime. We always like to cover these trials because it's a very interesting legal argument about the insanity defense and whether or not it will work. So you're not going to want to miss this trial. We'll keep a careful eye on the courtroom feed. If we should get something, we'll make sure to let you know. But let's talk about the Jason Carter case as we recap some of the biggest trials we've covered from last week. And the most appropriate place to start would be Bill Carter, the father of Jason Carter, the husband of Shirley Carter, the same man who sued his son, the defendant, in a civil trial before the criminal trial and won a $10 million judgment against him. A jury said in that case that he was legally responsible for the murder of, for the death of his mother. The question became now, was this man guilty of murder beyond a reasonable doubt? That becomes the question. Let's play some of Bill Carter's testimony in the criminal trial.
Shirley's role in Carter Farms.
She was a full partner.
Did you and her ever disagree about you stepping aside and turning over land to Jason?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. Again, this calls for a hearsay, and I ask that my objection precede the question and answer.
I don't think the question asked for hearsay. Your objection's overruled.
Was Jason Carter in 2015 aware what was in your will?
Yes.
How was he aware what was in your will?
When Shirley and I changed the will, we showed Jason and Shelley what we had done. We showed them the will.
And when you say Shelley, who is Shelley?
Shelley is Jason's wife.
Did Jason play any role in the administration of your will?
He was appointed the executor.
Bill, if both you and Shirley had died on June 19, 2015, what would have Jason Carter inherited?
He would have gotten the farm, which was worth $3.5 to $4 million, and another $800,000 at least in cash assets.
And is that because Jason got a third of the cash assets?
That's correct.
And did he also, would we have to split up the value of your equipment?
Yes, which would have been much more.
So when you take, how much money in savings did you folks have in June of 2015?
We had right at $500,000.
Did you also have money in IRAs and CDs?
Yes, we did.
How much money did you have in farm equipment?
Close to $1 million.
2015. Did you start to have concerns that Jason was going to struggle to pay off his farming debts?
Yes, I did.
Did you have an opportunity to examine, and how did you reach that conclusion without going into great specifics?
Commodity markets had dropped. And our expenses stayed the same. Seed corn, fertilizer, chemicals stayed the same. So was bound to happen to all farmers. I mean, it was, especially if you were renting a lot of ground.
What did you think he was going to have to, how much was he going to come up short?
I assume somewhere between 100 and 150,000.
Had you, in years past, bailed him out before?
Once.
Well, you're hearing more about the motive established by the state from Bill Carter. I want to get in some perspective right now from forensic death investigator from Jacksonville State University. Joseph Scott Morgan is back with us. Joseph, did anything about the crime scene strike you as odd?
Well, yeah, first off, we've got this missing rifle that Mr. Carter owned and was kept in an area downstairs, allegedly. That's never been recovered. And Mr. Carter actually stated that items of great value were still at the house. And so that gives us pause, doesn't it? As investigators, we think, well, most of the time, if this type of event, this death, is precipitated as a result of, say, a robbery or a burglary, why wouldn't more items be missing, and particularly those of great value? And this is an isolated location, Jesse,
right? Very
isolated. So out of all the farms in this surrounding area, in this very low population density area, they come to this farm and target this woman. This missing weapon is not there. No signs of forced entry, no signs of struggle.
And the defense was keen to say, hey, well, listen, maybe it was, like you said, intruders that came in and were in the middle, right at the beginning of burglarizing the house, when they're caught by Shirley Carter and they ultimately kill her. We're going to talk more about the defense's case, but I want to continue moving on to Bill Carter because he's about to describe when he found the body of his wife. Take a look.
Yes. Were the burn barrels burning?
Yes.
Where was Jason?
Jason was on the deck, talking on the phone. I didn't even stop. I just went running in the house.
What did you see?
I found Shirley on the floor. And she just looked like she was sleeping. Her eyes were closed. Her hands were crossed. And her legs were crossed.
What did you do?
Jason came in. And I said, Jason, look how she's laying. You don't die that way. And then he said, Dad, go downstairs. See if a gun went off.
And did you?
I had to picture her. The first thing I did was check her carotid artery. And she was dead. And then I picked her head up and I kissed her on the forehead. And she was cold. Then he came in and said, Dad, go downstairs. And I started down the stairway and I said, I never had any guns loaded. I never had any guns loaded. And I went back up and I picked her head up and I held her. there was a small pool of blood along her left side. It wasn't drying. It was liquid.
How do you know that, Bill?
I could tell. I stayed out of it while I held her head.
Bill, did Jason say anything else to you at this time?
He started pointing out bullet holes. He pointed out one in the refrigerator and one in the floor.
How did he point them out?
He just said, "Dad, look at that bullet hole in the refrigerator," and then there was a bad gouge in the floor. And he said he was standing in the doorway between the kitchen and the office, and he said, "Some son of a bitch has robbed you and they've killed Mom."
Did he ask you to check anything else?
He had me look at my office, and it was a mess. Just a mess. Dumped all over on the floor.
At some point, did you go check for your pistol?
I went and checked I kept a revolver in the closet, but it wasn't loaded. But it was there. It was there in the closet in our bedroom.
Then where did you go?
I went back to Shirley, and I held her. And then Kurt Seddon came in. He was a fireman. And he said, "You got to come out with me, Bill."
Did you leave?
Yeah.
Now, you told this jury Shirley felt cold.
Yes.
Did she feel cold to you?
When I kissed her on the forehead, she felt cold.
Bill, did your wife feel different that day than any other day in the 52 years you were married to her?
Yes. Yes.
But as it relates to your marriage, those 52 years, had you ever spent a night apart?
Yes, once when I went skiing in Colorado. Once.
One time in 52 years?
Yes. It's the only time.
Bill, when she was on the floor, where was she in relation to the air conditioning vent?
Her feet were almost right next to it. It was blowing right on her lower legs and her feet.
Some things to pull out there. Joseph, I want to ask you about the pool of blood. He says he saw a pool of blood, but the forensic pathologist, Dr. Cyril Wecht, who was called by the defense, said in his opinion, based upon the information he had, that the body was there for 2 hours, that she had been dead for 2 hours before Jason Carter made that 911 phone call. Can you reconcile those two?
Cyril Wecht's comment, no, I can't, and this is why. The best that we generally can do with very specific information, I would never narrow anything down below a 3 to 4 hour window. It's too much of a guess, and you would have to have specific information relative to body core temperature in order to ascertain this. You know, he's talking about Mr. Carter was just talking about the proximity of the feet to the air conditioning vent. Well, that's going to serve no other purpose than to cool the feet. What is really key here is what was her core body temperature. I'd like to know what they found at the scene relative to that. Now, maybe Dr. Weck has access to information that I do not have, but I don't see how he can kind of frame this down to a 2-hour window.
Well, the whole point is that, the defense wants to say she was dead for a long time before Jason Carter even got there, while the prosecution is saying he killed her and then called 911. The timeline really matters. And they were saying, well, maybe she was cold for other reasons, the prosecution wanted to say. Maybe she was cold because of the air conditioning. Does that make sense to you? I mean, again, pool of blood, but there for 2 hours? Wouldn't the blood harden?
I mean, the pool is still going to be existent. Now, Mr. Carter did say something that was kind of revealing. Many folks might not know this at home, but over a period of time, you have a couple of things that happen with blood that's been externalized. First off, the red blood cells will begin to separate from the serum, and you'll actually see kind of clear fluid. And there's kind of time parameters that we can apply to that. Also, the blood will begin to congeal, if you'll think of like Jell-O. But this takes a period of time for this to actually happen. But what is key here, what is important, is what was her core body temperature and what was the level of rigor and livor mortis at the scene. And you have to be able to couple all of that along with this other data. Now, he can say that it was potentially a 2-hour window.
Right.
I mean, anybody can get on the stand and say that.
Right. We'll talk more about this. We have obviously a lot more to dissect. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, it's going to be all about Jason Carter. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is Legal News You Can Use. Today's topic concerns something that unfortunately happens far too often. Your ex won't pay child support. Great, now what? Well, in a perfect world, try to work it out with your ex before things get complicated. Maybe even agree to a partial payment plan. But let's say that doesn't work. Here's what you can do. First, make sure you have a child support order from the court. Otherwise, your ex really has no obligation to pay. If you do, then gather up all the records and evidence that your ex isn't paying, including bank statements. Now, you may want to contact your state's child support enforcement agency. They have services and resources to help collect. Finally, you may need to petition the court for help. Usually what happens is the district or state attorney and law enforcement will work to make sure your ex pays. Garnishing of wages, seizure of property, or removal of a business, occupational, or even driver's license are all possibilities for a non-paying parent. And in extreme cases, your ex could be thrown in jail. Classic example, Mr. R. Kelly. Remember, even if your ex moves out of state...
Nice to meet you. Good. How are you doing? Meeting Cal for the first time was surreal. I mean, it's hard to describe the feeling of meeting somebody that you've always wanted to be like. You're realizing that there are people now that are looking up to you for their inspiration and to be their role model. And so it certainly is sobering. It comes with a weight of responsibility. It's so important that we continue to help veterans into the foreseeable future.
For more information, visit saluteheroes.org.
Jose works on a farm. Safety is important. His boss calls 811 to determine where it's okay to dig. This protects Jose from hitting an underground line and from serious injury. Because Jose can't tell exactly where or how deep the lines are, he doesn't dig until 811 tells him it's safe. The most important thing is that Jose works safe and goes home to his family. For more information, visit farmsafe811.org. A message from the Pipeline Operators for Ag Safety Campaign.
Welcome back, everybody. We're still recapping the trial of Jason Carter. It concluded last week. A jury found him not guilty of the murder of his mother, Shirley Carter. But let's just talk about the Carter family for a second. You remember we knew about this case. The criminal trial was precipitated after the civil trial. His father and brother both sued him for $10 million and won. They won a civil judgment against him, and that jury said that he was legally responsible for the death of his mother. But a criminal jury did not say beyond a reasonable doubt that he was guilty of the murder of his mother. Very different standards. But let's just talk about Bill Carter. So this man who lost his wife and now is testifying against his son and actually sued his son. It's a very complicated relationship, and I want to play more of Bill Carter's testimony where he talks more about his wife. Take a look.
You to that conclusion.
When she got done, when Shirley was done, she would rinse the 5-gallon buckets out, rinse them good. And so flies wouldn't gather. And then she would turn them upside down in the feed room. Well, they were upside down, but they were out on the cement slab. And she didn't get them back in the feed room. And that was unlike her. And the hose that she used to make the feed and then to wash the buckets out was still strung out across the grass there and hooked onto the hydrant, and she always coiled that up. She was very neat about it, and she would coil it up, and it was still stretched out. So I thought something had interrupted her.
Let's just play more of Bill Carter on the stand again, talking about his wife, talking about his son. He's probably in an unimaginable position.
Something that came to you later.
No, I noticed the jersey gloves were gone when Jason had me go down the stairway, and I came back up. I noticed they were gone. So I assumed they were outside with her boots or something, but they weren't.
At some point, did a person you known as Brad Kaufman show up on the scene?
Yes.
Did you know Brad Kaufman?
Yes, I knew him well.
Did you observe your son and Brad Kaufman having a conversation?
Yes.
Could you hear that conversation?
I could.
Are you specific about what they were talking about?
Jason had told Brad, and I overheard it. Maybe he wanted me to hear it, that he had started the tractor to circulate the chemicals that was in the sprayer, and that he had greased the sprayer.
As a result of that, at some point that day, did law enforcement take you to go look at the sprayer?
Yes.
Bill, were the zerts greased?
No.
Was the tractor still running?
No.
Okay, so Joseph, a lot of things to talk about. I just want to go back to the body. Dr. Cyril Wecht, again, who we're going to play, some of his clips on the next block. Just the idea of him talking about this body being dead for 2 hours. What can you tell us about the position of the body, the crime scene, the way that she was shot and killed? I mean, are there details that we're overlooking here that maybe we should consider?
Is what Mr. Carter had alluded to earlier when he was speaking with his son. And it just it hit you like a 10-pound sledgehammer in the chest when he says, look at the way she's laying. People don't die that way. And he's absolutely right. And over the course of my career, anytime I found a body outside of a funeral home whose hands were crossed across the chest like this, I'm thinking staging at that point in time, because to the general public, people that are not around the dead that much, they automatically assume that that's the position that bodies are supposed to be in. And that strikes me as odd. Of course, it's just one of the many factors that come into the totality of the case. It's not necessarily damning evidence, but it does give the investigator pause, if you will. And I think that that's one of the reasons that the prosecutor wanted to bring that to light and ask that question.
Was this a quick attack I mean, the timeline's crucial here. Was this a quick attack between firing her, shooting her, maybe moving the house around, maybe burglarizing? I mean, how quickly do you think this all transpired?
It's hard to say, Jesse. I know that with the weapon that we're talking about, this 270 that's missing, and again, I want to emphasize missing, this weapon is a bolt-action rifle, which means that the weapon literally has to be cycled by hand. People think about the handle that they've seen on deer rifles before. After you fire it, you have to pull it up, eject the spent casing, and re-engage the weapon with a live round, and then fire again. Close proximity, this is a very powerful weapon too. And it would take a moment or two. I think that the only place in the house, if memory serves me correct, that had been rummaged through was the office. But as it turned out, nothing was missing. Right. And again, that leaves me, that just strikes me. As
the defense wants to say maybe they were in the middle of burglarizing the house when she ultimately caught them. Is this a tough weapon to fire and aim and shoot? I mean, can you give us perspective on that?
Yeah, it's a weapon that would commonly be used to hunt game with, say deer hunting. In this particular area in particular, Iowa's is known for whitetail hunting. It's something that people would use to do this. And so it's generally fired at targets that are at greater distances. You're talking about a weapon in this particular case that was fired at close proximity. One would think that the handgun, which by Mr. Carter's admission is still present in the house, would have been the weapon of choice. But a deer rifle was used, and it's a devastating round, and particularly difficult to maneuver in kind of a tight, small area. If everybody can think of a long extended barrel, and you're having to wave this thing around, and you're doing it in front of your or you're doing it in front of this lady. Let me just put it that way. And now she's deceased, of course.
And the thing that really struck me to what you said was the idea of reloading it and firing it again. That's a deliberate act. That is somebody who knows what they're doing, has made that choice, has done it twice. This is cold-blooded murder, and the question ultimately became, who did this? The jury felt that it wasn't Jason Carter, but then the question becomes, if not him, who? And that's the interesting perspective. Joseph, listen, thanks so much for coming on and breaking down these cases as always with us.
Great to be with you, Jesse.
All right, everybody. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to play for you the testimony of Cyril Wecht, the forensic pathologist that created quite a bit of controversy in this case. We're going to break down his testimony and what it means. So stay tuned here on Law and Crime. We'll be right back.
My name is Sam Leitch. About a year ago, I had a heart transplant. My life was saved on the last day that I was supposed to be on this planet. I don't know who my donor was, but that person saved my life. And now I know what a miracle feels like. It feels terrific. Having a new heart's given me time to spend more time with my loved ones, watching them grow up. That new heart gave me a new mission in life, and that is to get others to sign up to be organ and tissue donors. The most common thing I hear when I ask people why they haven't signed up is, I don't know, I just haven't thought about it. Well, why don't you think about it? Think about the life you might save or the life you might enhance. Over 130 million people have already signed up to be an organ, eye, or tissue donor. They're men and women, all ages, all races, and they have one thing in common. They want to save lives. Please sign up to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You don't want to miss your chance to save a life.
Hey everyone, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is legal news you can use. The internet can be a complicated place for many different reasons, but one of the questions that seems to always confuse people is, can I use a photo or image that I find online? Let's discuss. Okay, so first, copyrights. Copyrights are all the exclusive rights that someone has in an original work that he or she created, including images. How they're distributed, seen, copied, and otherwise used is up to the copyright owner. Generally, if you created the image, you automatically own the copyright in it. Pretty cool, right? What this means is that you usually need the permission of the copyright owner before using the image. However, ask yourself the following. Are you planning to use the image sparingly, or maybe only a portion of it? Are you not going to make money off of it? Are you using it in a news reporting, educational, or scholarly context that benefits the public? Are you completely changing the image so it's unrecognizable? Are you transforming the meaning of the image, like using it in a parody? Is it impossible to get the permission of the copyright owner? Well, if your answer is yes to some or all of these questions, then you may be able to use it without permission, but that's not always guaranteed. Also, sometimes images no longer are copyright protected, meaning they're in the public domain. Or the owner grants something called a Creative Commons license, allowing others to freely use the image in specific ways. There are websites that offer royalty-free stock images as well. You should look into all that too. Copyrights aside, if the image features a logo or slogan, or a person, particularly a celebrity, then other issues could come into play as well, including trademark, privacy, and right of publicity laws. I told you, complicated. So best practice is to get permission or give credit whenever you can before using an image, particularly on social media. For more legal news you can use, go to lawandcrime.com.
Can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me something. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, no thanks, not my thing.
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Do you know the signs of a brain aneurysm? The worst headache of your life? Pain behind one eye? Dizziness or blurry vision? Don't ignore it. Seek immediate emergency care. The Lisa Calagrassi Foundation. Learn more at lisafoundation.org.
Welcome back, everybody. You're joining us at a great time. We're recapping the Jason Carter case from last week. The man who was found not guilty of murdering his mother, Shirley Carter. Remember, she was shot dead in her house in 2015. And what we're talking about right now is some crucial testimony from the defense. They called out Dr. Cyril Weck, who's a renowned forensic pathologist. All of our true crime fans out there have probably heard of him before. And what he testified to for the defense was crucial. It was about how long he thought Shirley Carter was dead for before Jason Carter made that 911 phone call, because the timeline in this case is so important. Take a look.
You were asked to attempt to determine approximate time of death for Shirley Carter. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you able to do that to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
What is your opinion?
In my opinion, Mrs. Carter had died about 2 hours, possibly somewhat more, possibly a little bit less, but no less than 1 hour. More, most likely, in my opinion, I would express, would be around 2 hours, recognizing some variation up or down, so to speak, from a temporal standpoint.
And that was 2 hours prior to
the time that Mrs. Carter was found to be dead by her son, Mr. Jason Carter, and then with Mr. William Carter, her husband, and then Ms. Goff, the EMT person.
On what factors do you base your opinion?
Well, the criteria that we use in determining time of death are, of course, background investigative material, information to the fullest extent possible. That certainly is most important. What can you know? What can you ascertain about the individual's endeavors, activities, to the extent that they can be documented and verified. But then from a forensic scientific standpoint, the factors that we use are criteria, indices of death that have been around literally for centuries. Rigor mortis, body stiffening, livor mortis, the gravitational settling of blood into the dependent parts of the body based upon the position of the body when the individual dies, and algor mortis, body temperature. Then sometimes gastric contents may come into play, and sometimes other things that you notice, the eyes and things of that nature. But the most specific criteria are the ones that I mentioned: rigor, livor, L-I-V-O-R, not the liver, livor, and algor, body stiffening, gravitational settling of blood in dependent parts of the body, and body temperature.
Well, that is a big development for the defense, because if you take what he said as true, that means she was dead for quite some time before Jason Carter made that 911 phone call, which means he really couldn't have been the killer according to the prosecution's timeline. That's a big point for the defense, and you have to imagine, since the jury ultimately came back and found the defendant not guilty, this testimony might have helped. I want to just play that, though, in relation to Jason Carter's police interview, where he talks about discovering the body of his mother. Take a look.
Asked Charles if he could have a load out there to me.
And the next clip?
Same day, June 19th.
Chemical load for chemicals we spray.
What were you spraying?
Beans.
Beans, okay.
And so I called Charles, or I don't know if I called or text him. I texted him, and I said, "Can you have a load ready for me as soon as possible?" And he said 10-4 and wanted to know where to bring it. I said, "Bring it to Mom and Dad's house. The sprayer's sitting there still." And he said 10-4. I'll have it headed your way. And I pulled in the drive and parked, and was going to get in the tractor and start up and start the PTO going. Start mixing the chemicals that were left in there from yesterday's spraying. And I decided, well, I got plenty of time before they get out here. I'm going to run inside and see what Mom's doing and see if she's going to start dinner and get something to drink. I walked in the door, and I see her legs and feet together laying there. But I couldn't see the top half of her body behind the table. And I said, "Mom?" And I thought she was laying there, because when she gets dizzy, she's had dizzy spells for the last couple of years. She'll lay down on her back to get over it. I just thought that's what she was doing. She did. And I took another step forward, and I could see the shit. I was like, shit. And there was fucking blood around her arm. I was like, and I thought maybe she fell off the counter, because she gets stuff up high and hit her head. And I knelt right down, and I grabbed hold of her leg. And she was stiff. And I could tell she wasn't alive. He just knelt down and said, "Oh, Mama." And he grabbed hold of her leg and put her back down on her.
So, Jason, you just, the only part you just touched her on the leg.
Yeah, I put my hand on her leg and shook her and said, "Mom."
Was she cold to the touch?
Yeah.
Okay.
She was stiff.
So.
Oh my God, shit. Oh shit, there's nothing. Shit. There's nothing to do. Nothing I can't help her. I can't help her. There's nothing I can do. I couldn't even think of breathing life back into her. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Oh, take your time. Nothing to apologize for. Yeah, take your time.
I can get that picture around my head. Holy crap. I'm laying there.
How long were you there before your dad went there?
I don't know, maybe between 5 and 10 minutes.
Okay.
Poor Mom. She didn't deserve this at all. She didn't.
So as we analyze how the jury ultimately came to their verdict of not guilty, we're looking back at some testimony and some pieces of evidence and seeing what did the jury hold on to. Obviously, we don't know unless we speak to the jury, but that moment could have been very important for them. And this idea of listening to him on that tape, perhaps they felt that that was very genuine. Perhaps they felt that Dr. Cyril Weck's testimony held a lot of water. The idea that her body was there for 2 hours, at the very least, before Jason Carter eventually called 911. On top of the fact that there was not a whole lot, if any, DNA or forensic evidence tying Jason Carter to the crime, aside from the fact that his fingerprint may have been found on his father's gun case. There wasn't a lot that you would have in another kind of murder case. This idea of motive, you know, that he was a struggling farmer and without his parents around, he could inherit the land, which was worth $3.5 to $4 million at the time, plus I think it was $800,000 in cash assets. Yeah, that's a motive, but was it established clearly? Was it enough for one to kill one's mother? And then also looking at the surveillance footage of Jason Carter in the day in question, seemingly living his life, walking around, not really in a rush for a man who was about to commit a murder. These things kind of add up, and you're starting to get a sense of how the jury ultimately reached their verdict. Now, the prosecution was keen to say that he did have the opportunity, he had a tough relationship with his mother, and maybe even more importantly, the statements that he made to family and investigators after finding his mother dead were really things that only the killer would know and that were very suspicious. Now, I'm kind of summarizing the prosecution and defense's argument, and I really shouldn't do that because when we come back, we're going to play for you the prosecution's closing argument, the defense's closing argument, and the prosecution's rebuttal closing argument, the last things that the jury heard before they ultimately rendered their verdict. So stay tuned here on Law and Crime. We'll be right back.
We farm about 3,500 acres. There's pipelines everywhere. The contractor working on my property did not have the lines located before he began work, and it resulted on a strike on a natural gas pipeline. Fortunately, no one was hurt, but it could have been much worse. Calling 811 or visiting clickbeforeyoudig.com in the U.S. only takes minutes to do, and it can save your life.
Daniel Villegas, not guilty of...
I'm Aaron Keller. Join me for the Daily Debrief. It's your chance to catch the hottest moments of the biggest cases we cover here on the Law and Crime Network, plus the day's top legal stories coast to coast.
I didn't really think at that moment I was going to pull that trigger.
She did it!
And his body just went boom.
An Ohio woman took the stand in her own defense today on charges she murdered her husband. Spacey faces one charge of indecent assault and battery on a person over 14.
Guilty.
I'll never see him again.
I've wanted this for quite a while.
Do you need a break, Mr. Brown?
I'll be all right. Just give me a minute.
An admitted meth bombie accused of murdering her son through neglect.
Did you meet up with Cheyenne and have sex with her?
Yes.
Why do you think prosecutors put in that evidence of the mother starting a relationship with the drug buddy?
Did she have a motive to maybe hide this baby?
My dad loved Mike.
If you missed anything during our live trial coverage, we bring it to you again on the Daily Debrief. It's your chance to get caught up in your favorite cases, Monday through Friday, live from 5 to 5:30, right here on Law and Crime. Tonight on the Daily Debrief.
Many medicines used to treat colds and flu contain acetaminophen, a pain reliever and fever reducer found in hundreds of over-the-counter and prescription medicines. But taking too much or more than one medication containing acetaminophen per day can damage your liver. So always read the label and don't take acetaminophen if you drink 3 or more alcoholic drinks every day. To learn more, visit fda.gov/OTC pain info. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Food and Drug Administration.
Most of us like to be out in the sun. That's why sunscreen and other safety measures are key to protecting your skin from aging and cancer. The FDA recommends using a sunscreen with an SPF of 15 or higher. Also, look for broad spectrum on the label. That means both harmful ultraviolet A and B rays are blocked. Remember, SPF plus broad spectrum equal healthy fun in the sun. Visit www.fda.gov/sunscreen for more information. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
All right, we're coming to the conclusion of our recap of the Jason Carter case from last week. Let's start right now with the prosecution's closing argument.
The crime scene was staged. Common sense told us that. Nothing was taken, except the things that were used to commit the offense. But what that means is something that a person like Joe Kennedy, with 25 plus years of experience as a NCIS officer and a guy who goes around the globe solving crimes, has to tell us. It's important because staging demonstrates it wasn't an interrupted burglary, and it wasn't a burglary. Staging means this wasn't a stranger who committed this offense. Burglars are strangers who commit burglaries. No one walks in for the purpose of trying to make it look more like a burglary. That just doesn't make sense. The fact that this crime scene was staged, and keep in mind, this doesn't take long amount of time. I literally could walk over and do what Jason did in the office area on this table in 10 seconds? And then we can count the number of steps it takes us to walk to the bedroom, to open 2 drawers, knock off some cards, and put some socks in. This was not an extensive period of time. Staging means you are trying to distract from you, the perpetrator. Jason was trying to distract law enforcement from determining he was the one who was responsible. Because if you think about it, if Jason doesn't do that, what does this crime scene look like? Shirley Carter's just shot in the home, in her kitchen. There's no ability for Jason to orchestrate, what about these other people that we heard all about the last 2 days? If Jason Carter doesn't create that noise, we don't hear anything about that. Because the only reason that story, these alternative suspects, make sense is because it's an attempted burglary. Well, who caused the attempted burglary? Jason Carter, by staging.
So the state's saying Jason Carter killed his mother and staged the crime scene. What was the defense's response in their closing argument?
There are 2 things that the state talked about: clues and an evidence-based investigation. Well, let's talk first about clues. And I'm not making light of this in any way. This isn't a game where you try and fit together the clues. But no matter what, all the state is telling you is look only at one set of clues. This was a case built against Jason Carter instead of a case trying to solve a crime and look at all the clues. And the terms evidence-based investigation, well, we know the state's own criminalist said, I'm not aware of any forensic evidence. So now, what are we left with? And the state has based this entire case on the statements that Jason Carter did make and the ones they say Jason Carter made. Now, the question was said, or the statement was made, well, the state hasn't rearranged these, they put the questions with them. Well, you get to look at those clips. You know that Jason Carter was in that same chair for 9 hours. And the officer testified, yes, he was being questioned and pushed and told what he was saying wasn't truthful. And then you have hours more of footage. And those clips are not in chronological order. They're rearranged to make the point the state wants to make. But let's look at just a few of those statements. Mr. Bowl opened by saying she would have been terrified. Well, listen to that clip. What the officer says right before that is she was for someone who seems to be such a kind and gentle person, and he says she would have been terrified. And you can listen to it and put whichever interpretation you believe is appropriate. The state talked about the statement, the text to Charles Smith, and that Jason Carter said he said 10-4. Well, you have the other texts, and Charles Smith had said 10-4 at different times. But Jason Carter didn't assert that's exactly what happened. Before that, he said, I don't even remember if I called him or had a text with him. But after he gets pushed and pushed and pushed to, now what happened, he's like, okay, he said 10-4. Well, this is in 9 hours of questioning, and he references something that happened the day before. The state says this was some sort of staging. He was trying to cover his tracks. How does that cover your tracks? He's handing over his phone. He knows the state's going to read his phone. It's just a mistake. And really, what this comes down to is the minute Jason Carter finds his mother dead, his response, which may be different than my response or another person's response, is to start thinking what happened. And you see that as you go through this entire amount of evidence. He is the one looking around for all the clues.
Okay, the prosecution had one more thing to say to the jury. Here's their rebuttal closing argument from last week.
What time did Jason Carter get there? Clearly, I was not clear what my argument was, because Ms. Branstad said I said Jason Carter had only been there for 3 minutes or whatever it was. Let me try again. Give me a do-over. What I'm saying is, the time Jason Carter claims he got to the house doesn't work. It simply doesn't work. If he hops out of his truck and goes straight inside, he can't be getting there a few minutes before 11:08. I'm not talking about the time between he calls Jana Lane and the time he calls 911. I'm saying about between the time he arrived and the time he calls the sister. According to his times, that trip should take 49 to 58 minutes. His times.
Well, the jury heard it all, and what was their decision? Here's the verdict from last week.
Of verdict number 1, we, the jury, find Jason Carter not guilty. Is that your verdict, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Bull, do you care to have the jury polled?
No, sir.
Very well. In light of the jury's verdict, I will enter a judgment of acquittal. Any bond previously posted by the defendant will be released and exonerated. Anything further on behalf of the defendant at this point, Ms. Branstad?
No, Your Honor.
On behalf of the state?
No, sir.
Very well. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. You are released. I would ask that you hang out in the jury room for a couple minutes. I'll be in just a couple of minutes, okay?
Well, that's Jason Carter being embraced by his wife after that very emotional verdict. They're not guilty of the murder of his mother. Up next, our very own Bob Bianchi is going to be interviewing Ed Bull, who was the prosecutor in this case. We played you some of his clips from earlier, again, when he was delivering those closing arguments. We have a lot of questions for him. His reaction to this verdict, many people were surprised by it. On the other hand, there were others who felt that, hey, there just wasn't enough evidence to go forward against this man. Well, Bob's going to be taking over and governing all this case. We'll be right back right after this. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is Legal News You Can Use. Today's topic, what happens if you don't pay your credit card bill? Let me just say, don't put yourself in this position, all right? It's not one you want to be in. First, the credit card company will start to contact you after your first missed payment, usually when you're 30 days late. Now you may think, oh, I'll just ignore them. Well, after 60 days without paying, your interest rate could skyrocket. I'm talking doubling or even almost tripling. You also probably have to pay a late fee, and your credit score could go down. So are we having fun now? Well, it gets worse. After 90 days of non-payment, the credit card company could terminate your account and then sell your debt to a collection agency. In some states, you could then be sued, which could result in a garnishing of your wages and or a lien placed on your bank accounts or property. I told you, not good. Here's a tip. If you're going to have trouble paying, get in front of this. Don't ignore the credit card company or debt collection agency. Communicate with them and be honest. You may be able to work out alternative payment plans, and in some cases, it may be wise to retain an attorney. Go to lawandcrime.com for more legal news you can use.
If you talk and they will hear you.
We all want our kids to grow up safe and healthy, so we show them how. And we tell them with honest conversations that let them know what we expect. Not just one time, but every chance we get. That's especially important when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. Kids not only need to know the dangers and how to avoid them, they need to hear it often from you. And when it comes to pain medications, opioids, they need to know that they should never be taken without a prescription and never shared with friends or family. It's dangerous and illegal. So talk with your kids and guide them through the challenges of growing up safe and healthy. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
So talk, they hear you. You can do it if you try.
Can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me something. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, no thanks, not my thing.
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
A brain aneurysm can strike you when you least expect it, plunging your entire world into darkness. But if you know the warning signs, you're much more likely to survive. If you suddenly experience the worst headache of your life or sharp sudden pain behind your eyes, do not ignore it. Please seek immediate emergency attention. It's time to shed some light on brain aneurysms. You gotta know the information.
The Lisa Colagrassi Foundation, lisafoundation.org.
Well, welcome back to the Law and Crime Network. My name is Bob Bianchi. I'll be with you to 3 o'clock today. Happy Monday to you guys, to our viewers, to those in the chat room. We are on fire at the Law and Crime Network. We have all sorts of things to go over. Let me put the glasses on. We got the Dukes case, Scandirito recaps. But you guys may remember the Jason Carter case. We covered it gavel to gavel at the Law and Crime Network. It was a fascinating case. A son accused of shooting and killing his mom. It was a hotly contested case. You see a picture of the defendant there. Well, he was found not guilty. That's right, folks, not guilty at trial. And I have the honor and privilege of bringing on the show the prosecutor who actually prosecuted this case, Ed Bull. You may remember him. He did an outstanding job with the evidence presented to him. But, you know, prosecutor, sometimes when you got to convince 12 beyond a reasonable doubt on a case of this nature, you're not able to make it past that goal line. So welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, and I found out offline that you're also a Jersey guy. You come from Edison, New Jersey, so that is a point, a check mark well in your favor, sir. Let me just get a little background. You are the chief prosecutor, the head prosecutor, and you're in your third term of office. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I was as well. I think one of the first questions I want to ask you, you're elected out there. We're appointed by the governors. I tried a murder case when I was prosecutor. My team thought I was crazy to do it. There's a lot of publicity. Your staff is watching you. Kind of takes on a different dynamic. Is this the first case that you've actually ever tried, or have you tried other cases as well?
No, we are a rural area, but this is, in fact, our third homicide that I've prosecuted over the last 9 years. Within the first week of me taking office, we had a husband who paid a hitman to kill his wife. So literally the first trial I tried as a prosecutor here in Marion County was a homicide trial. And then we prosecuted, successfully convicted both the shooter and the husband approximately 8 years ago.
Well, I have a lot of respect for it because I know there's a lot of pressure when you're the top guy and that media focus is like a laser beam on you. So, sir, let's go to Jason Carter. What do you think of the verdict? I mean, was it something that was unanticipated? Was it surprising when you were waiting for them to deliberate? Were you saying, comme ci, comme ça, could go either way here?
Bottom line, I think if you talk to most prosecutors and law enforcement officers, they'll tell you you try to solve a homicide case one of three ways: through a forensic evidence, through eyewitnesses, or through a confession. And in this case, we had none of the above. So we recognized from the very beginning that this would be a difficult case to present with the evidence that we had. But at the end of the day, we believed that we had a good faith belief that conviction was likely. And so we went ahead with the prosecution. But, you know, as soon as you're sitting there and you present the evidence, we thought we did a good job. We clearly didn't convince the jury beyond a reasonable doubt. And the chips fell where they did, and you have to we respect the jury's verdict when they come back in our favor. We have to respect the jury's opinion and their verdict when they come back not guilty. It's the way our system is designed.
Of course, sir. Now, listen, 12 minds are always greater than one, I have found in my life. Do you think it's possible that the jury got it right and that maybe there's a potential another suspect in the case? And if so, are you looking into or asking the police in your capacity as a chief law enforcement officer to see if there's any other culprits to this crime?
I wouldn't have signed my name to the trial information and brought this case if I did not believe Jason Carter was responsible. With that being said, law enforcement will always continue to investigate as we get leads that are supported by the evidence. And ultimately, that's what this case came down to, was we had, in my opinion, a number of adverse rulings that allowed the defense to get into some things that we didn't believe were appropriate and we thought were persuasive to the jury. We'll have to have an opportunity once this jury panel is dismissed from their term of service. We will attempt to contact them through surveys to see exactly what they were thinking. Was this a case where they believed the defendant was innocent, or did they just simply believe the state didn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt? And we'll explore those issues. And of course, we are always attempting to, by any prosecutor, I would hope, we want to be certain we have the right guy. And we were certain we did. The jury saw it differently.
What do you have, before you do that kind of due diligence, which is awesome, do you have an idea in your mind as to what you think the jury had a problem with?
You know, I think ultimately the forensic pathologist's testimony, I think we're all familiar with the doctor. He does an outstanding job as a witness. He did in this case as well. I think that the time frame issue was problematic. You know, at the end of the day, I was amazed by the fact that when the jury came back into the jury room, half a dozen of our jurors were crying. I'd like to gain some more insight as to what that meant to them, whether or not it's just the emotion of this entire type of case, or whether or not they believe Jason Carter was innocent, or whether or not they believed I simply failed to meet my burden.
Prosecutor, I'm curious, have you had an opportunity to speak to the husband, Bill Carter, and the family and their reaction to this?
Yeah, I actually visited with Bill Carter yesterday to see how he was doing. Expressed my condolences as a result to the verdict, but we were clear with Mr. Carter from the very beginning that we believed that this would be a difficult case. We now live in a world of CSI and other type of shows where jurors want to be firmly convinced. And I think that's appropriate under our current standard of our reasonable doubt instruction here in Iowa. But it's always difficult to go back to a victim and say, hey, I'm sorry, we didn't get the job done.
Yeah, prosecutor, there's something also kind of interesting in this case that I found from a legal point of view, and that is there was a civil trial that preceded the criminal case. And in my experience, when you have both going, typically the civil case is either stayed by the court to the conclusion of the criminal case, or if the civil case proceeds, of course, the defendant, that would be Jason Carter that we see there on our screen, would have a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. How was it that the civil case was able to proceed before the criminal one? And did that civil proceeding give you additional information and data that you felt useful in your criminal prosecution?
Well, it truly, Bob, was a double-edged sword. The reality was, yes, it afforded us, if Mr. Carter chose to participate and not take his right to the Fifth Amendment, it did allow us to gather additional statements from him that we did, in fact, use during the criminal trial. At the same time, though, it also put all of the state's witnesses under oath as well, including Mr. Carter and his family and law enforcement to some extent. And that then allowed them to have potential evidence for the purpose of impeachment that otherwise may not have existed. So in this case, we looked at it from a standpoint that if Mr. Carter, that being Bill Carter, wanted to go ahead with his civil case, we were not going to stop him. We advised him in advance that we did not think that was the right direction to go, but that was his choice. At the same time, our investigation did not stop. One of the things that we presented in this case, and I'm not certain whether or not your viewers had the opportunity to see it, was some expert witnesses as related to both crime scene staging as well as where Jason Carter's handset was immediately after the homicide. We believe the homicide took place. And what was fascinating to us was that Mr. Carter always maintained that he never left the residence of 132 Perry Street. However, our expert witness indicated, based on his cell phone tower information, he in fact traveled to the north and the east of the property, which we believed coincided with him getting rid of the gloves that spent shell casing, whether or not it was one or two, or the weapon. And so the result of that was we thought that was fairly persuasive. And that was evidence that we continued to work through with U.S. Cellular and with our expert during the time in which the civil case was going on.
Prosecutor, I got a limited amount of time, but I'm glad to hear that you were trying to dissuade the Carter family from necessarily going forward in the civil case. I presume that's because state's witnesses would be subject to examination and that could hurt you in the criminal case. But the reason I bring this up is because during the course of the trial, and I got to get this because our viewers were fascinated, there's a lot of chat going on about evidence that was developed during the course of the trial. And I'm speaking about 100 pages of police reports, I believe it was. There was an issue, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there was a police officer that violated a sequestration order. There were some deleted emails, and that there was an indication that there was an intent to arrest prior to the civil case. So this discovery violation issue that the judge found, did the jury know that? Were they advised of that?
Well, I want to take a step back because I think it's important to keep in mind that we have a vastly different opinion than the defense did on this issue. One of the byproducts of all of the media attention that resulted as a result of this case, whether or not it was the civil case or the fact that we were moved out of our jurisdiction, was that we had tremendous media attention. That media attention developed additional leads being called into law enforcement. Additionally, discovery in this case was not completed until about a week and a half before the trial were to begin. The defense listed, I think, in excess of 100 witnesses they intended to call at trial. We deposed those individuals. Those individuals then, in some cases, provided us new information that they had never told law enforcement before. The result of that was we chose to continue to investigate this case. I asked my detectives to continue to run down every one of those leads. So there is some truth to the fact that there was new information that was provided to law or to the defense, but it was information that had been generated in the previous 3 to 4 weeks. So I think any argument to say that there was a discovery violation, no, just the opposite. We continued to investigate this case, and we continued to provide the defense the reports that we had, regardless if they were exculpatory or not. We simply gave them access, unfettered access to our entire file. In addition to that, about 10 days before the trial, the defense asked for the very first time, to the best of my knowledge, all emails that had been sent by law enforcement in this case. Well, that took some time to have the state's IT people review in excess of 50,000 emails and then redact potentially confidential information and law enforcement data related to individuals. We also turned all of that over as well.
Did the judge, I'm sorry, prosecutor, did the judge indicate that there was a Brady, that's referring to Brady versus Maryland violation? And the second part of my question is, are you saying that those 100 pages of emails and the discovery that was the subject of this Brady argument was only of recent origin? It wasn't a long period of time, but did the judge find a Brady violation?
Judge did not find a Brady violation. The defense repeatedly attempted to move to dismiss this case. The court chose not to do that, took it under advisement, was going to wait until the conclusion of the case, but there was no Brady violation found in this case.
Okay, so then my last question on this piece was the jury ever apprised of this kind of argument that was going on? The reason I bring it up is, listen, even though prosecutors are charged of being in possession of all the reports, even if they don't necessarily have them in their possession, at least that's the law in most states, sometimes something gets past the goal line by accident. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's done on purpose. I have seen judges, though, that will instruct the jury that that violation, that discovery violation, nevertheless has occurred. Did that occur here?
It did not. The only, I would say, adverse ruling that the defense got as way of a jury instruction was a spoliation instruction as related to some fly eggs that were located in Mrs. Carter's nose at the time of autopsy. The Iowa State Medical Examiner did not, at the time in 2015, routinely collect those eggs, and as a result, that was the only adverse instruction. Now, I would also note there was also a delay in this case during jury selection because the defense also, at the 11th hour, listed additional expert witnesses. So we asked for, and were also granted at that time, permission to depose those witnesses. And so that's what we did in this case at the very end. Even during the course of the trial, we were continuing to do depositions of witnesses that the defense continued to add during the course of the trial.
Sir, are you indicating to me that, in your opinion, in terms of the procedural fairness of things, that the defense was given latitude by the court to introduce evidence perhaps that was coming in late, and that somehow kind of threw you off your game? Or did you feel you had the appropriate amount of time to prepare for it and the verdict would not have changed either way?
The verdict would not have changed either way. I'm not making any excuses whatsoever. The court treated us fairly. The only ruling that I thought was contrary to the law, in my opinion, had to do with the defense's ability to admit hearsay through Special Agent Ludwig without exception to, in essence, try to prove an alternative suspect. The court, probably something that may be interesting to some of your listeners and viewers, is what was he deemed Sadi 2.0, some other dude did it 2.0, which allowed for hearsay to come in to say, did you learn this? And then give the jury an instruction that said, hey, don't take it for the truth of the matter asserted. Simply examine it from the context of, did law enforcement follow up on those leads?
Prosecutor, I got 10 seconds left. What's the one thing we don't know about that the public should find out about, whether it be something fascinating, just a little anecdotal story, or something compelling in your mind?
I think one of the things that most people don't realize is that, at least here in Iowa, we have a cordial relationship with the defense bar. This was not an adverse proceeding. We'll fight tooth and nail in the courtroom within the bounds of the law, but afterwards, We all go back home. We all know each other's families, and we treat each other with respect.
Okay, Prosecutor Ed Bull, two things. One, I have three things. Mad respect for you from the Edison piece. Two, any prosecutor that puts themselves out there in the top job for that public scrutiny, win, lose, or draw, I've got respect for. And third, I think the last message you said perhaps is the most important in 30 years of practicing law, a cordial relationship. You fight like hell inside that courtroom, and then you go out and you treat yourselves with respect and professionalism. Ed Bull, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
You got it. Good luck. Okay, guys, listen, fascinating interview. You can only get this at the Law and Crime Network. I'm asking, where else can you go? This is the place to be. We got a lot more coming up. Stick with us. I'll be with you at 3. We'll go to break. We'll be right back.
All right, crew, let's get started. All right.
Don't ignore the law. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 days before any digging project so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
How I define making? In the broadest possible terms, it is making something extant in the world that didn't exist. Everybody who's ever made anything is bringing something into fruition for a reason, and that act in and of itself makes us stewards of our culture. It's something that we're talking about. It's a response. Actually, it's telling a story. That's really what it is. And I include everything that could be made. Painting, sculpture, welding, all of that. Yellow is positive. When a kid gets their hands on the world and learns that they can make their fantasy play, that they can make their reality, that's power. And as far as I'm concerned, everyone should feel that kind of power. There we go. If there's something that interests you to bring into the world, that's fantastic. Go figure out how to do it. Go tell your own story. There it is. And so I want to know why you make. Let's go.
Share your own Why I Make story today. Visit whyimake.org.
We believe in patriotism. We believe in our nation's youth. We believe veterans earn their benefits through their service to our nation. We believe in a strong national security. We believe in our country. For 100 years, veterans have been impacting our nation through the American Legion, and we believe it makes a difference. If you believe, learn more at legion.org/webelieve.
Anyone can fall victim to moving fraud. Know your rights and responsibilities.
We had really signed off on a price, and that was about it.
Without a signed written estimate, movers may try to charge more.
They were charging us now $2,000 instead of the agreed upon $900.
And may hold your items hostage until you pay.
Not only had they roughly handled or mishandled, it seemed like they had purposely destroyed things.
Visit protectyourmove.gov to download a free moving fraud prevention guide. Search for registered movers and view their complaint histories. Move with confidence.
All right, welcome back to the Law and Crime Network. My name is Bob Bianchi. I'll be with you at 3 o'clock. Pleasure to be back. Gavel to gavel coverage on these cases. No one is doing it like they are in this Dan Abrams production. The Bo Dukes case. Let's take a real quick look at that case because there was a police interview of Bo Dukes that I think is kind of fascinating. And I'm going to talk to my very special guest. For those of you who are in the chat room, you could try to guess at who it is. I want to see if you get it right. He's one of my faves. I gave it away. It's he. So listen, let's take a look at that interview. We'll be right back.
I was at our house. Ryan was there. A few people came over. We were drinking. And I passed out. Went to sleep. Woke up the next morning or after somewhere early afternoon or something, Ron wrote me out and said that he told me that he had, this was next Sunday, told me that he had killed Terry Nestead. I thought he was, I didn't believe him. I thought he was not. I told him, to go home and go to sleep. The next day, I think it was the next day, his brother, who else was with us, came home and told me that she was missing. And I told him what Ryan told me that the day before. And he didn't say anything about it. Really, just kind of ignored it. I think I asked Ryan again a couple days later, like that Wednesday, after I seen everything in the media going on, and he told me yes, he had. And I didn't believe him. And he asked me to come with him out to the Pecan Tree. And I went with him. And we drove back into the back. And he showed me where her body was. And freaked out, got up. I asked him what the hell had happened. He told me that he had gone to her house that night, used a credit card to get him through the front door lock, and strangled her into bed. And then brought her body to the orchard. But they had stopped in Fitzgerald at a dumpster behind the laundry mat there, and found her purse and keys in the laundromat. I don't know if he was trying to put her body in the dumpster too, get do it, or anything like that. And he asked me to help him get rid of her body, and I agreed to help him. And there was a shelter out there that was full of firewood, split wood, and fat lighter. And we used that in my truck and moved her body to wood area. There was a bunch of wood, and we burned it over a period of like 2 days.
He takes you to this orchard, and is the body covered up with anything? Is it clothed?
No, it was not clothed at all, and it wasn't covered up with anything. It was laying face up in some knee-high grass.
Okay, but you could just see it unless you. I mean, if you were walking by, you'd see it, but if you were parked over here, you probably couldn't be able to see it, right?
No. I mean, but if you were, it wouldn't be too far away, you could see it.
Okay.
I mean, maybe 2 rows over.
And you said it was laying face up?
Yeah.
Did you know who it was by looking at her? The body?
Yes. I mean, he'd already told me who it was, so I guess I was already expecting that, but...
And you had her for a class still resembling her?
Yeah, I mean, it was... discolored, I mean, I guess blood pool, there had been ants on her.
Was there any other marks or scars or anything, gunshots, knife wounds?
Marks on her neck.
Can you describe the marks on her neck?
Almost like bruising, I guess. Not extremely noticeable, but they're there.
Were there like lines or anything like really distinct? Okay. So by this time you're probably freaking out.
Yeah.
Okay. So you immediately see this and you're like, what in the hell did you do?
Yeah, and why the fuck would you do it here on my family's big anniversary? I said,
what did he say?
help me. That he messed up and he needed my help. I was angry.
Is that when he told you what had happened?
Yes.
Go through that again, tell me.
I asked him exactly what had happened. He told me later in the night, after everybody had gone, after I was gone to sleep, he drove a fish trailer, drove to the house, and he said it was late, very late, that night. And he used a credit card to get in through the front door. He jumped on her while she was in bed and strangled her right there in her bed. And then he had moved her body with the truck. I don't know, the front seat, the back seat of the truck.
Fascinating interview. Guys, we got a lot more on our plates, including another special guest that we're ringing up right now. So it's a great opportunity to take a quick break. We'll be back on the other side.
What would happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be.
There is no typical firefighter.
Everybody can make something, because I think everyone has a spark of creativity, and the reason that I have to keep making is because I don't think my life would be as fulfilling without it. If you make things yourself, that means you're not cowering in fear. You're out there taking chances. That, I think, is my way of saying I love you to the world. All right, now I want to hear why you make.
Share your own Why I Make story today. Visit whyimake.org.
Give you a hand.
All across the country, people are coming together to speed up what we can learn about health. The All of Us Research Program is calling on 1 million people to join us as we try to change the future of health. For your family, for future generations, for all of us. Visit joinallofus.org and find out how you can become 1 in a million.
Yes. Oh, hi. I suppose you're wondering what an A-list celebrity like me is doing in a place like this. You must know, I'm saving the world. Oh, hi, Beth. Yep, saving the world again. Did you know that 40% of all the food produced in the United States is thrown away? That means everything that went into that food, the pesticides, the water, the land, was all for nothing. Just look at this perfectly good food thrown in the trash. The pizza with extra Cheerios, these goldfish and Band-Aid tacos. And just look at this perfect trash burger. This pasta dog looks delicious.
You don't have to dumpster dive like Ed Begley Jr. to save the planet. Fight food waste by shopping smart and using what you buy before it gets trashed.
That's way better. Ooh, it's reasonable.
Do your part and find out other world-saving tips at betterthaned.org.
Recently, somebody was asking me why it is that I love hosting on the Law and Crime Network, and there are just so many reasons, much of which has to do with the true crime pieces to the stories that our people find. The room of folks back there, the producers and the camera people, the writers are unbelievable. And we find these fascinating trials across the country, and then we get to go gavel to gavel with those, really do a deep dive, not a 1-minute hit, but we really get to have pros come on here, like my next guest for the Law and Crime Network, and put on witnesses and bring people like Ed Bull on the show and really get into what it's like to be a trial lawyer in the real world of the real courtroom with real defendants and real victims. One of the next cases we got coming up that our crew picked, which is unbelievable. A lot of them are tragic, but it's a great case, and it's going to bring out some really interesting legal issues. It's the Jonchuck trial. He is charged with murdering his 5-year-old baby girl, Phoebe. It's a really, really horrible case. Look at that little angel. I get goosebumps every time I have one of these cases that we lose such precious gifts like this. It's really sad, and that's what made me love being a homicide prosecutor myself. But anyway, she was thrown off the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, 62 feet to her death in the Tampa Bay. Obviously, this comes out of Florida. But the story in this trial is going to be about Jonchuck and his mental competency. I mean, you take a look at the guy. He looks weird, twisted, and distorted just from the pictures themselves. And for a certainty, insanity defense is what is being postulated in this particular trial. We have a very unique opportunity to speak to someone who has been following this case from stem to stern and will continue to do so for the rest of this trial. So I get yet another great guest to come on the show. Josh Solomon from the Tampa Bay Times is the reporter that knows this case inside and out. Josh, I know you're busy and there's a lot going on, but thank you for appearing on the Law and Crime Network.
Hey, in your introduction, you mentioned that Phoebe was dropped from the Sunshine Skyway Bridge. She was dropped 62 feet from the Dick Meisner Bridge, which is about a mile from the Sunshine Skyway on the northbound lead up. So I just wanted to make sure that was correct. A lot of people, misconstrue those two details. But before we get started, I figured we'd start there.
But there you go. There's why you're the expert, because I literally read that off an article that was provided to me. And so little details like that are important because, you're there. You're watching it. You know all the details. So that's what makes you an amazing guest. Thank you for that correction. So listen, give us a little bit about the backdrop of what led to this, because there was actually a police chase. And then I also want you, Josh, to get into the defendant's mental health history prior to the incident.
Yeah, so the incident started, it started late one night, right after midnight on January 8th, 2015. There was a PT Cruiser driven by the defendant, Jonchuck, who was heading toward the Sunshine Skyway Bridge from St. Petersburg, Florida, south. And he was speeding, and there was an off-duty police officer who sort of started following him, lights off, and was just observing to see, what the driver of the PT Cruiser was going to do. The driver ultimately pulled over on the side of the road at a bridge, got out of the car, went to the back seat, and pulled his 5-year-old daughter, Phoebe, out of the back seat. The officer got out of his cruiser, had his gun drawn, a little unsure about what was going to happen, and before he knew it, Jonchuck had dropped Phoebe off the bridge. From that point forward, then there was a police chase as Jonchuck drove south into Manatee County towards Sarasota, and he was ultimately apprehended shortly thereafter.
I'm curious, Josh, because we know in insanity defense, and we'll get to that second part of the question in a minute, is being posed here, but conduct just before and just after is very relevant to a prosecutor with regard to showing what we call goal-oriented behavior. That is, that therefore he knew and could appreciate the rightfulness and wrongfulness of his actions. That's pretty much the standard definition of sanity or insanity. And flight from police would clearly be used by prosecutors prosecutors to show consciousness that he knew that he was doing was wrong. Do we have any information about what kind of state of mind he was in once he was eventually stopped by the police?
So once he was stopped, he was very calm. He wasn't panicked at all. This is what officers said in their depositions. He didn't follow directions, but he didn't disobey directions. He basically was just static. I personally, I don't know what that says about his mental state at the time of his apprehension. It's been well documented that he had some. He was behaving erratically prior to dropping Phoebe off the bridge. Earlier that day, he carried around this enormous Swedish Bible, and he was in a custody battle for Phoebe, and he asked the lawyer who was representing him in the custody battle to start reading the Bible in Swedish, and of course she can't read Swedish. There was some mention that he had been salting his home to try to rid the home of evil spirits. So I think that's what the defense is going to try to lean on, to say that his mental health was deteriorating, before and until he dropped his daughter.
Josh, we have reporting, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong because you're the guy, but I have written down here that the day before his death, that his lawyer called the Division of Child Services, I assume it is, saying that he's delusional, that the DCF did not investigate that he takes the daughter to 3 churches begging priests to exorcise her. He wanted an exorcism. One of those priests called the police when he came out. From the data I'm getting, the priest basically said, well, he's not a danger to himself or others, and the police let him go. And that these were all things that were happening just before that incident. Are those facts accurate?
Yeah, pretty much. So he went to the lawyer's office that was going to file some paperwork in his custody dispute over Phoebe, and again asked her to read this Bible in Swedish. She can't read Swedish. She thought he was acting erratically, so she actually called both the Florida Department of Children and Families and the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. The city of Tampa is in Hillsborough County down here in Florida. DCF has a pretty high and specific threshold for, activating investigations, and they felt, based on her call, that there wasn't anything they could do. They were hamstrung by their policy and their resources. When the lawyer called the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, 2 deputies met Jonchuck and his daughter at the church where the lawyer said he was going next. The 2 deputies interviewed him. There's something in Florida called the Baker Act, which allows people to be taken into medical custody if they're a threat to themselves or to others. But the deputies didn't feel that he met the requirements for being Baker Acted. And so there's really, as far as they were concerned, there was nothing they could do or no reason to take him into custody. Yeah. And so they let him continue on his day.
Yeah, sad thing, because I also understand there have been numerous previous involuntary commitments for mental health issues. Whether or not police got that data, I don't know. But when you have a lawyer calling in and a priest telling you that somebody's acting delusional and he wants an exorcism for his kid, I don't know. Am I missing something as to why he wasn't brought in?
I think they try their best to follow guidelines. I really can't speak to that so much, but it was the lawyer who called both DCF, the Department of Children and Families, and the Sheriff's Office. The deputies met him at the church based on a call from the lawyer. I just want to make sure that point is accurate. It wasn't the priest who called 911, as far as I know.
Well, definitely in an article I read that it indicated a priest did call, but I guess we'll find that out during the course of the trial. Josh, listen, you've been an amazing resource. I hope you'll consider coming back and giving us more of your, awesome knowledge of this case and your insights, because cases like this should be highlighted. Those little precious angels, we need to do a better job, Josh, don't you think?
There were certainly some failures highlighted by our reporting and other people's reporting immediately after Phoebe's death. There have been some policies and some regulations changed, and I think that's why reporting on these sort of incidents is important, to try to avoid tragedy in the future. Right. Today, opening statements, and we hope for some good testimony today. And so, absolutely, have me back anytime. I'd love to come back.
Josh Solomon from the Tampa Bay Times. Thank you so much, sir. We need to go to a break. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is legal news you can use. So we all hit a rough patch at one point or another. There's no shame in admitting that. Many times it concerns money, and maybe you're having trouble staying afloat. So our topic today is, when should you consider filing for bankruptcy? Bankruptcy is for those who can't fulfill their financial obligations and need a do-over. But bankruptcy is reserved for only those extreme situations, and a court is going to look at the following. You've tried but failed to work out a settlement with your creditors. You've turned to consumer credit counseling, but it hasn't resulted in a solution. A court ordered that your wages be seized or garnished to satisfy your debts. You have outstanding medical bills that you just can't pay. You either don't have assets or not enough to pay off your debts, or your savings account, if you have one, is not going to help either. Okay, so you want to declare bankruptcy, but which kind? There are two that apply to individuals. Chapter 7, where your assets that can be sold off by a court will be in order to pay off your debts. This includes clothing, jewelry, artwork, or property. Or Chapter 13. Now, this option is better for people who have a steady income because here you just reorganize your debts and develop a plan to pay back over time. There are a lot of advantages to filing for bankruptcy. Namely, your creditors will stop coming after you, and in certain cases, you won't have to repay some of your debt at all. But remember, bankruptcy can seriously hurt your credit score, and it doesn't relieve you of having to pay specific debts like alimony, taxes, child support, or mortgage payments. So before you file, consult with an attorney first. For more legal news you can use, go to lawandcrime.com.
Hi there. You might wonder what a famous Hollywood celebrity like me is doing reading in the dark. Is this some new sort of Hollywood method acting? No, this is quite real.
Did you know that Americans use about 4 times as much energy per year as the global average? We waste energy left and right despite the fact that the dirty fossil fuels we use to power our energy sources wreak havoc on the natural world and destroys valuable wildlife habitats.
By reading with my solar-powered night vision goggles, I'm saving energy and looking sleek.
You don't have to sit in the dark like Ed Begley Jr. to save the world. Fight climate change by speaking up for cleaner, smarter energy, including rooftop solar.
Oh, that's way better. Oh.
Do your part and find out other world-saving tips at betterthaned.org.
Both my legs were amputated due to an IED. It's when you start to try to get back into like an everyday life. I absolutely felt like I lost some of my purpose. There must be something more. When DAV came into my life, they gave me a new mission. I could still be a productive member of society, could still support a family.
The DAV gave him that sense of structure and purpose again to get his life back together.
Visit DAV.org to learn more about our mission.
Welcome back to Law and Crime Network. I am Bob Bianchi. I'll be with you at 3 o'clock. So this Bo Dukes case, which resulted in a guilty verdict and a 25-year sentence. I love that we have an opportunity to do the post-mortem on these cases because, while we're doing them and as the cases are developing, we're just hearing it in real time and giving you legal analysis. But when we have the verdict in, we have an opportunity like we did with Prosecutor Ed Bull to really go do a deep dive into what do you think now that the verdict came out. And that's exactly what we're going to do in the Bo Dukes case because I think it's just an amazing trial to watch. I'm going to bring on my guest later. It's going to be Gene Rossi, my man, hashtag 4041. Nobody better to break down and do a post-mortem than with him. But let's go listen to a little bit more of this interview because there's something about this interview that I find just in general to be a little odd. Let's take a look.
So you said it took a couple days. Did y'all light the fire, burn it, leave, come back, or did y'all just stay out there and watch it burn?
We left and came back a couple times.
And each time it got a little bit less of the body, a little bit less of the body?
Yeah, we put add more wood.
You can still, after the first burn, you can still see the body.
Yeah.
Just kind of like charred.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, was there any jewelry or anything on her that you know, or was it just completely new body?
I think she was wearing a belly button ring.
Okay. Remember what it looked like?
Not really, no.
Like diamondy or bling?
No, I think it was just plain.
Do you remember if it was on the upper half or the lower half? that you can think of? Any tattoos? Anything like that? Okay. So you said it took 7 days?
2 days.
2 days? So by Friday, there's nothing left?
No.
That you can, I mean, nothing like, there's probably some little smaller bones or stuff like that y'all just kind of left there?
It looked like it was all ash.
And most recently, you've told somebody else?
Yeah.
What you're telling me, who was that?
Brooke Shannon.
Who else? Anybody?
My ex-wife.
Who's that?
Emily Stillman.
When did you tell her?
2008 or 2009.
What did she say back then?
She was surprised. My friend Dustin Truglin.
Truglin?
T-R-G-L-I-N.
T-R-O-G-L-I-N.
I think he also released his last name Warren. I think he just changed it for some reason.
They all live local?
No, Dustin lives in Portland.
Oregon?
Yeah. Emily lives in Cameron Mills, New York.
Cameron Mills?
Yeah. I told 2 guys a couple months after it happened, one night, Reese Jones and Cliff Benson.
All right, welcome back. So there's Bo Dukes giving his interview to the police. Let me bring on Gene Rossi, 3 decades with the DOJ, a law and crime legal analyst. He's all over the TV. We're like following one another from networks to networks, but there's no better network than the Law and Crime Network, Gene, because we get to do postmortems on cases like this with real serious trial talent on this TV to break it down. So let's do that. Welcome, Gene.
Good afternoon.
All right, so Gene, he's giving an interview where this is the Tara Grinstead case. It was an unsolved case from 2005. There was a show that was on it called Up and Vanished, a documentary, ultimately leading to the arrest of him and Ryan Duke. Just so our audience who may not be familiar with this case know, Ryan Duke is the one who is alleged to have actually committed the murder and will be on trial in April. The prosecution sought to go after Bo Dukes. They're not related. Their names are similar but not related, for the cover-up afterwards and assisting in the disposal and the hiding of the body. And it went unsolved for many, many years. And as I understand it, there was not even these guys on the radar screen, at least from the law enforcement point of view. And during the course of one of these confessions, the person who actually committed the murder, Ryan Duke, tells police that he made a 411 call after he had assaulted Tara Grinstead in a burglary gone bad, and went to get her number, called the home, and when she didn't answer, I guess he presumed she was dead, and then he went in and did this, this heinous crime. No one knew about that 411 call because it was never released to the media, only law enforcement and a limited group of people. So I want to start off with, Gene, when you get targets in a room, how vital it is. I know as prosecutor, the media was constantly asking questions during the investigation, and we buttoned it up, we would say, because we didn't want that data out in the media so that when we did interviews of targets or witnesses, they were testifying about what they read as opposed to what they know. Thoughts?
Absolutely. And I just thought of this. I think in 1962, it was the famous Boston Strangler case. And they eventually got what they thought was the defendant. But because it had been highly publicized, Bob, about how the victims were killed, all females, and they were strangled a certain way with certain rope knots that were tied. And they had a lot of people that came forward to say that they are the Boston Strangler, and they were just feeding the same information that they read in a paper. They're feeding that to the police. So it's crucial for police not to divulge key information, just the basics.
Yes, I've literally dealt with it myself, where ultimately when we're asking the witness, how do you know that? Not even a target. And they're like, well, I kind of read it in the newspaper. And there goes that witness. That witness is essentially shot from a credibility point of view. So Bo Dukes gives this interview, Gene, and he winds up going to trial. He's tried first and gets 25 years as a sentence. Why do you think the prosecutor went with Bo Dukes' case first, rather than the guy who's really more responsible, if you will, the person who actually committed the murder, Ryan Duke? What do you think?
Pancakes. The prosecutor wanted to flip Bo Dukes. I got to get the name right. The prosecutor wanted to flip Bo Dukes like a pancake. And by threatening to take him to trial first, I suspect that they were trying to get him to plead guilty before trial so they wouldn't have to try him. And of course, Ryan Duke is the main guy, but the pancakes, they were trying to flip Bo Dukes.
Well, I'm going to put this in my prosecutorial strategy hat here for a minute. Ryan Duke gave a confession, too, and a very solid confession, including that little piece of data about the 411 piece that nobody knew about. So that case looks pretty locked up to me. The only reason I could see trying Bo Dukes first from a tactical point of view is that if I get a conviction and I can get a major sentence against the guy, if I can't get him to cooperate ahead of time, which I don't know why they weren't able to do that, then he still has a Fifth Amendment right, if he files an appeal, not to be put on the witness stand in the Ryan Dukes case. Correct. So as a prosecutor with Bo Dukes, and I flipped witnesses and pancaked them, as you'd put it, and used one against the other, but I usually do that with a guy like Bo Dukes, flip him or get him to testify against Ryan Duke. And it doesn't look like that's going to happen here.
No, and you know what? I don't want to be a Monday morning quarterback. I don't know why Bo Dukes did not plead guilty before this trial, because that interview that you've been playing, it is absolutely horrible for Bo Dukes. And this was basically a slow plea, a guilty verdict that really is a slow plea. So I'm wondering how hard the defense attorney was pushing this, or maybe the defense attorney was pushing real hard and Bo Dukes was just very stubborn like a mule.
Well, you know, one of the questions I don't know the answer to, and I know there is an answer to the question, but, you know, is when we're watching that interview, the thing I wanted to bring out about that interview is the old maxim. I mean, when the two best things you can do when you're a criminal defendant is rule one, don't speak to the police or law enforcement. Rule two, get the best lawyer you can afford. Let the lawyer make the decision if and when you go to speak to law enforcement, because if you speak to them before you get the lawyer, you don't necessarily get cooperation credits here. So either he was represented at the time of this interview and the lawyer did not extract a deal for him, which is bad lawyering, or he was not represented and proves the point that you can only get yourself into trouble. And sometimes, Gene, my last point before you opine, I used to kind of feel bad when a guy would come in without a lawyer and get him and be speaking, which is a prosecutor what I wanted him to do. And then my assistant prosecutors would come to me and say, yeah, well, we got a confession from him, so we're going to give him more time. And I would look at it and say, you mean because the guy cooperated without a lawyer, he gets hurt more? But a lot of times they talk themselves into a conviction. What do you think?
They do. And I would be shocked if Bo Dukes had an attorney when he gave that interview that we've been watching. I would be surprised. And going to cooperation, if I had a person unrepresented come to the police and spill their guts and talk to the police and essentially confess, I would kind of give them a break, because they would not have come to the police if they had a lawyer. So I did give the benefit of the doubt. Of course, I was a very aggressive prosecutor, but if you cooperated, this is my rule of thumb. I was aggressive, but if you cooperated, I used to tell my witnesses, if you're truthful and you cooperate, I'll walk over hot coals and I'll swallow crushed glass to help you out. But if you lie to me, you're toast. I said that all the time.
Well, you know, in this case, to your point, Gene, he got 25 years and he cooperated by giving him this statement. And that's a really, really lengthy period of time in my mind for a guy who didn't actually commit the murder.
I can explain that.
Do it in 15 seconds or less.
By watching that video and his pregnant pauses and the way it seemed like he was making up the scenario as it was asked, I think the jury found and the judge found that he took part in the murder of Tara.
The prosecutor's looking at it, the court's looking at it, the jurors are looking at it, that you're not so innocent and you're just basically responsible. Gene Rossi, this is why we have you on our show. We got a lot more coming up on the Law and Crime Network. We got some business to do. We're going to go to break, and we'll be right back.
Hey everyone, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is more legal news you can use. Today's topic focuses upon the common issue of when your neighbor's trees cause you problems. So what are your rights? By law, you can trim branches or limbs of a neighbor's tree that extends past the property line. But don't go overboard. You can't chop down the tree. Otherwise, you may have to pay for it. Now, if the tree blocks your view, 1, check if there's a local ordinance. 2, maybe you can enter into an agreement with your neighbor regarding the view. Or 3, see whether your neighbor deliberately and maliciously blocked your view, because you then may have a case. A couple more strange things. Your neighbor not only owns the tree, but the fruit on it too. So technically, you're not allowed